What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live. It is a brand new episode of Liam Picks Fights. You see my dog lurking in the background because we got dogs barking at UFC 300, and we're excited to break it down for you once again. It's bets and banter. If you're new here, my name's Liam. I pick fights here each and every week on the show, but we're doing something special. It couldn't just be a normal breakdown for a big card like this for UFC 300. We're breaking out all the stops. We got a power panel today. Let's introduce our guests. First of all, you know him, you love him. He's a usual over here. Just win, baby. Rich is back in the house. How you doing, Rich?
Yeah, back, bro. Big card, UFC 300. Got some guests on. It's a milestone of a card. And yeah, looking forward to breaking down the fights, man.
Hell yeah, absolutely. We got high energy Liam. We got Rich coming in a little bit later than usual, so we appreciated making the time. And we had to accommodate our guy, from Die Hard MMA, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. Welcome aboard, brother. How are you? It's great to see you again, friend of the show.
Always glad to see you, man. Good to see you guys both. Thank you very much for having me. Hell of a card. One of those ones where us as degenerate gamblers and podcasters can't talk about it enough, man. Really just could keep on going. So happy to do an extra show with you guys this week.
Appreciate you making the time, my man. And you've got big things going on. You've got your compatriots over at your new home, you know, some of them fighting on the card, Renato Moicano in particular. So a lot of interesting stuff to break down, but we also have one more panel member to introduce, our friend, John Stargarian. It's been a while since he's been on the channel, but we love to have him back from the Club and Sub podcast. You know him, you love him. John, how you feeling, my brother? Welcome back to the show.
I'm good. I'm pumped to be back chatting with you guys, especially on a card like this one. It's awesome. It's flattering. And I've updated some opinions since my show last night, so good place to put them out there.
I love it, man. And what we always stress on this show is I do my first look, and that's like not set in stone, right? I'm always going to be doing more research over the course of the week, try and leave no stone unturned. And that'll be true again tomorrow when I continue to do the research process. But what we're going to do is bring you what we've got, and we've got a lot of great fights to talk about. So without further ado, why don't we start like we always do? That very first fight of the night. We got two champions fighting in the first fight of the night. That's how you know it's a special card. Deiveson Dice-Duguera, the God of War, Figueiredo taking on Cody Garbrandt. No love, baby. Ohio in the house. This is a fun fight. It's a fascinating fight. The former bantamweight champion, Cody Garbrandt, been on hard times. Now a 2-fight win streak against the lower levels of the competition. Obviously, Trevin Jones cut from the promotion. Brian Boom Kelleher coming off a neck surgery. Nothing really to write home about there. But he's getting some momentum, right? And that's what you need to do when you're kind of falling off the rails. You're getting knocked out. You're losing direction. You're down at a different weight class. Is it real? That's what we're going to have to find out on Saturday night, because Deiveson Figueiredo is a real fighter. He's a guy who's going to provide a stiff test. He's got power in his hands. He's got the ability to submit you, brilliant guillotines. But does he have the pace? Does he have the ability to go out there and outwork these guys at 135 pounds when he's already 36 years of age, when he's already a guy that hasn't really, put together a long resume at bantamweight that we say, oh my God, look at this. It's more speculation. We always thought he'd do great at bantamweight, but now he's 36 years of age trying to figure that out, and it's a talent-rich division. So Cody Garbrandt hasn't looked like the cream of the crop lately, but there was a time he was one of the best divisions in the sport. So do I want to write him off here at minus 300 on the first fight of the night? Not really, because I think if this fight goes to the cards, we're probably looking at a 50-50 type of fight, very close fight. And I think that if somebody gets finished, it's much more likely to be Garbrandt. But are we really ruling out Cody Garbrandt by KO? I mean, he's a very dangerous guy. He's got power in his hands. He's willing to throw and commit in the pocket. And I do think Figueiredo, at 36 years of age, doctor stoppage losses via knockout, had opportunities in the past where guys hurt him, rocked him, wobbled him, and he was able to recover. That was at 125, where he's the bigger guy, the stronger guy. In this fight, I think they're probably going to have some physicality similarities. I think that Davison's not going to be out-muscled here, no doubt, but he might be very comparable to a guy like Cody. So for me, it just feels like a closer fight on paper than the odds indicate. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
Yeah, with it being a panel show, I will try and keep it short and not try and, echo everybody else. But I think Figgy wins. It's the durability of Cody. I can't put my money on, man. I can't trust the guy's chin. I know it hasn't been cracked for a minute. So he's been looking good, implementing some wrestling. But I think Figgy's good at this weight class. I think the only thing I got going for Cody here is speed. But I trust the chin of Figgy more, man. And that's basically what it comes down to. He hits too hard. He's too dangerous, like you said, with the guillotine as well. That's someone I wouldn't mind backing. The money line is a bit disrespectful, so I'm going to look at a prop man. Maybe the guillotine, could be a club and sub. Or I might take the KO. I don't know yet, but I do want to attack the props in some way.
Yeah, that was the only prop I looked at on the Figueiredo side was the submission, because I do think Cody will probably shoot if he gets hurt in this fight, and I think his guillotine is absolutely lights out. You don't want to be there, kind of like a Pedro Munoz type figure. So good points there. Do you have any bets on this fight or any interest in backing a side here, Clint? How do you feel about this one, my brother?
You know what, Liam? I don't have anything on this one, and I was kind of fully expecting to be all steam ahead on Davis and Figueiredo here in this spot, but the numbers just kind of gotten too wide for me, man. I don't like it. I agree with everything you said, and gun to my head, I am picking Davis and Figueiredo to win this fight. I've been well known to fade the chin of Cody Garbrandt. I don't like the durability. I don't like the IQ. I don't like that he'll bite down and swing and try and swing dicks with a guy every single time he gets hurt. I think that's a problem, and I think someone like the God of War is going to crack him if that takes place. So I am picking Davis and Figueiredo. I think you have to look at the props at this point, and it does scare me that we're kind of all on the same side here. And the number, I think it opened up very close to pick 'em, and now we're looking at like a minus 300 favorite. So I would have made the number wider to start than that, but still, anytime that's one-way steam, that doesn't end very well more often than not. And Liam, if you don't mind, real quick, first and foremost, I did see in the chat, yes, I will twerk, so don't push me. I'll do it. I'll do it right here on fucking camera. And just to address the elephant in the room, folks, Rich and I have buried the hatchet, believe it or not. This has been a peacemaking journey. So we're fresh start right here, baby. So Liam put this whole thing together. I'm excited about it. And anybody hoping for fireworks, you might get less than you're expecting tonight. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, listen, we mend fences on this show. We're trying to bring people together. The whole point of this show from the very beginning is sharp people don't always agree, even on individual fights, right? You have two sharp guys take opposite opinions at the same numbers on the same fight. So I think that we have a difference of opinion on some of these things. That doesn't mean we can't be friends. That doesn't mean we can't have a laugh, have a conversation, all hang out. So I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you addressing that. Peace, love, and chicken grease to each and every one of you guys. Shout out to Nick Juarez. Appreciate that message in the chat. So, John, how do you feel about this one, man? Do you think there's any value on Cody? You think they're Cody donations? What do you think's going on here?
Well, so last night when I did my show, I said I was leaning towards betting the Cody side. But like, funny story. So like last year was just like an absolutely horrific year for me. The 3 years prior had all been profitable. Last year was a disaster. So I did an audit before this year started, just all my results from the last 5 years. And what I noticed was the biggest leak I've had in my game, not just last year, but just in perpetuity, has been kind of fading hardware and just kind of ignoring it. Like there are people who talk about finishes being random. And yeah, I mean, there is a degree of randomness, but some guys are much better at manufacturing finishes than others. Some guys are just better at not getting finished. And that's something I've kind of just always ignored and been like, okay, I'm going to cap this based on skills alone. And so I've tried to be a little bit more methodical about it than this. So when I looked at this initially, I was like, yeah, I mean, Cody's been fighting really defensive lately, back foot circles around. And if that's the case, it's probably a low volume fight where he's a bit faster. He might be a bit better of a boxer. He's a bit younger. That's probably good for him. But the more I thought about it, obviously I know Cody's not durable, but it's with that in mind, it's okay, let's say that is the fight that happens. I can't even get to 50-50 in that fight because it's Cody's going to be on the back foot. He's far more likely to get hurt. Figgy will be front footing it. So it's even in that fight, it's you almost have to be minus 200 Davidson. And then when it comes to what the actual finishing equity is here, yeah, I mean, Cody hits hard, but who was the last guy Cody knocked out? I mean, was it a Sunsao? No, Keller, sorry, his last fight. But prior to that, it had been a long time since he'd knocked anybody out. Cody's been knocked down 7 times in the UFC. Davidson's been knocked down once. I think the reality of the situation is Davidson's probably 2 to 3 times more likely to finish this fight than Cody is. And when you factor that in with him just landing bigger shots and being more likely to wear big shots well than Cody is, it's just really, really hard to get to Cody better than 30% here. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pass for me. I think Davidson should win. I give him way more chance to finish this fight.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to just round out this fight by saying I largely agree with your guys' takes. I think that the one thing about Davison is that he's a little bit reliant on like single shots at a time. He doesn't throw a lot in combination, and Cody does have decent enough head movement. The thing that's normally gotten him in trouble is his decision making. I thought somebody hit the nail on the head. Understand boxing, regular in the chat. He had said like Cody makes bad decisions, which I totally agree with. If you look at how he's conducted himself in the past, like he has gone out there and tried to kick from in boxing range with Kai Kara France and gets dropped. That led to the beginning of the end. That was at 125 pounds. You see the Dillashaw fights, like both of them, he's just completely emotional, wants to swing in the pocket, and then gets killed in both of them. Very predictable reactions. The Pedro Munoz fight, I would argue that he got battered with the leg kick so bad that he just like needed to go on a suicide mission and find out like, all right, either I'm going to take this guy out or this fight's over anyway because I can't stand on my leg. And I just feel like in this fight, Davison's not going to chop the leg like that. So I think he's going to have a little bit more mobility. And if he has the mobility, he showed in the Asuncao fight. I know that Asuncao is not the greatest fighter out there, but he's still a guy who's out there pushing it, getting wins. Victor Henry just beat him. He literally just got him out of position, threw one big shot, and killed him. And it's like, could he not do that to Davison? Like, I think he can. So it's a game of percentages. I haven't, gotten to a bet on this, but if I was to bet a money line side, I think it's obviously Garbrandt or pass at the current money line pricing. Next up, guys, Bobby King Green taking on Jim Miller. We'll start with John Stargarian here, the pride of New Jersey. Jimmy Miller and John Stargarian to break it all down. How do you feel about this one, brother?
Funny story. I actually ran in. So he lives in Sparta, or lived in Sparta. I think he's still out there. But a couple years ago, I play golf out there all the time. They have a ton of golf courses out there. My buddies and I, we always stop a quick check in the morning, get like burritos and stuff before we go to the course. Jim Miller was just chilling in there. Like I said hi to him, whatever, like super, super cool dude. Absolutely love Jim Miller. I love Bobby Green in the spot though. I mean, I guess obviously the thing on every single person's mind is like Bobby got KO'd viciously 4 months ago. I'd be remiss not to obviously mention that. And I think when it comes to stuff like that, like there's a bit of signal and a bit of noise, and it's always kind of hard. It's like one of those things where like for some people, it doesn't impact them at all. For others, it has a massive, massive detrimental impact. But I feel like capping it by a percentage, it's hard to like take more than like 5% away from Bobby. And like 5% a pretty big number in terms of like handicapping a fight. And like, when I look at the fight, it's like, yeah, Jim Miller's won 5 out of 6 fights. He seems to be on a run, but then it's like, I mean, he's 40 years old. He's not really getting much better. He's not getting any better. Let's be honest. If anything, he's getting worse. 3 years ago, Jim Miller was taking L's to Joe Selecki, Vince Pichel, Scott Holtzman, and people were writing his obituary. Well, what changed in the last 3 years? Well, instead of fighting like mid-tier lightweights, he started fighting the Eric Gonzalez's of the world, the Jesse Butlers of the world, the Gabriel Benitez's of the world. And he's been winning those fights. But I think it was interesting to note with all the stuff about, Bobby potential durability going, Jim Miller hadn't knocked anybody out for a decade prior to Eric Gonzalez. He then knocked out Eric Gonzalez, Jesse Butler, and Nicholas Mota, all of whom are famously chinny or not in the UFC anymore. I don't think it means anything in the context of this fight since Gabriel Benitez is fairly chinny himself and took his shots fine. Like when I look at the fight, it's like Bobby's been fighting legitimate top 10 guys for his last 3 losses are Drew Dober, Jalen Turner, and the current champion Islam Makhachev. All top 15 guys. He's been fighting the cream of the crop, and he's mostly done pretty well outside when he comes up against like serious hitters. The stats support Bobby well on tape. I just think he's a much faster striker. He's a much cleaner striker here. In the grappling, I mean, Miller can maybe sub him on a bad entry, but Bobby's the better wrestler in my opinion. And Jim, if he ends up on bottom, is going to be happy to accept guard and just lay there and get beaten up. So I look at it and I feel like Bobby has just about every skill here. Even durability, I don't think he's at much of a durability disadvantage. Like the guys who knocked him outstanding are Jalen Turner, Drew Dober, and Dustin Poirier. I think he's got Jim covered here. I think Bobby's taken a decent step down. I think the line isn't speaking of which, last time they were booked, the line was minus 275 when the fight got called off. I think it's not that because of the Turner fight and the narratives around Jim Miller for UFC 300. But honestly, all the data to me supports Bobby being in the 70, 72% range here. I like him a fair amount.
These are two guys I really like and respect. So I'm wishing nothing but the best for these guys. But I do think that KO really concerns me. Coming off that KO loss, it wasn't like, hey, I got stopped with strikes like Julian Erosa against Padilla, right? Where I was like, yeah, I mean, he got stopped, but that's a classic Julian Erosa, right? He gets rocked 50 times, and then if you don't kill him, he'll beat you. And I think that this is the kind of fight where it's like, Bobby Green, I think his chin is kind of falling off a cliff fast. And the only reason I say that is because I actually bet him against Drew Dober. If you guys go back and rewatch that, tell me if you disagree. I thought it was a masterclass. I thought Bobby Green was like,
he fought great,
painting a picture on Drew Dober's face, and then one big connection and the fight's over. I know Drew Dober's a big hitter, but still, like Bobby Green earlier in his career, I think takes those shots and keeps coming forward, and he just got insta-killed by it. And it's because he's getting older too. So I think you got two guys who are getting a little bit up there in age. That where it becomes a little bit washy for me. I feel like most of the time you'd have to give the durability edge to Miller's opponent. But now it's like, I feel like that's kind of a wash. Clint, how do you feel about this one, brother? Is this a matchup where you're thinking, hey, let me pass and just enjoy, UFC 300, Jim Miller out there? Or do you think there's some betting value to be had?
Yeah, man, I think I'm probably going to take the pass approach on this one because I agree with almost everything John said here. The one thing that really bothers me, though, about the durability situation is not the Jalen Turner fight, although it does bother me. It's not the Drew Dober one because, let's face it, Drew could do that to anybody. It's the Jared Gordon fight. Like, him getting pieced up by the hands of Jared Gordon, a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of power, I guess has suddenly found a bunch of power late in his career. I don't know. That's weird. Gets, knocked out essentially twice in that fight, right? Like, he gets clipped with the hands and then he gets headbutted to oblivion. It's multiple fights now. It's not just one bad one. It's just not he got caught once. It's a lot of times that he's been caught. Man, essentially, I'm a huge fan of Jim Miller. And like everybody else, I want to get his hand raised. Is the 100. And I agree with everything. It's a step down. He should have a big boxing advantage. We should be able to see him win this fight. I think Bobby Green by decision is probably the most likely outcome for this fight. The Alexander Hernandez fight against Jim Miller is really bothering me as well because we've seen just how bad Alexander Hernandez has looked recently. And if Jim couldn't get beyond the boxing of that guy, like I think he's going to have a hard time getting past the jab of Bobby Green. But I want to see Jim Miller win, man. Like that's at the end of the day, like I can't every once in a while, I can't separate my fandom from my bets. It happens from time to time. And this is one of those ones where like, I really want to bet Bobby Green because I think he should probably win the fight. But I'm going to be really upset, even collecting my money, if I see Jim Miller lose at UFC 300. So I think I'm going to set this one out. Bobby Green is the pick. I feel like the line might be a little wide, maybe, but I'm going to be rooting my ass off for Jim Miller.
Hell yeah, man. I think that's the sentiment of a lot of people, even Miller supporters this week that maybe think, hey, he's in over his head with the matchup. Bobby's taking a step down in competition. So maybe they'll just sit on the sidelines for this one. And I don't blame anybody for doing that. It's a volatile fight. Great fights, two older guys. Exactly. On a great fight night like this is actually one of the worst fights on the card, which is saying something because it's a fantastic fight. Rich, how do you feel about this one, my man?
Yeah, nothing too much to add. I'm on the Jim Miller side. I just think that Bobby's output won't be good enough. And yeah, it'd be competitive on the feet. I think it just frustrate people like he's done in the past. Usually is a minus 250 favorite when that happens. I think if you're betting Bobby Green, it's probably going to be a decision, most likely. But yeah, just competitive on the feet. I think the only thing I didn't agree with John is the wrestling. I think it's pretty much 50-50. I think Jim Miller can have success. Even if he's not getting a takedown, he can cage press, waste some time, and burn down the clock. So yeah, Jim Miller to get it done, man. Some fairy tale shit.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of times in the past where I bet on Jim Miller round 1 and 2 props and things like that. And I would avoid that here. Like if I'm on the Jim Miller side here, I would just take the money line. And the reason I say that is because I think he's live by all methods. Bobby Green is the king of getting close split decisions to go against him and like close decisions overall. Like he just sometimes is too defensive. I think that's a good point, Rich, where you said like, he doesn't do enough. That's kind of been the story of his career in the losses he's had. It's like he can go out there and style on somebody like Nasrat Haqparast for the full 15 minutes and not finish him. And then he can also have performances where, I thought he beat Thiago Moises. I thought he beat a couple of these guys along the way, but he just leaves it. So it's like, he's doing the head nod and he's pointing at them and he's shaking and doing this stuff. But Dustin Poirier does that and then hits you with a left hook that you die. And like Bobby Green does that and then like also shoulder rolls the next 5 shots and like just does a lot of moving and having fun. The other thing is that style can drop off a cliff just because, like, if you could take shots and you could roll with them and move with them and nothing's really hurting you, the Fiziev fight comes to mind where Bobby took a lot of shots, but he was rolling with most of them. Nothing hit him too clean. And then he was able to come back on him in round 3. That's kind of been the Bobby Green story. And I'm just like, in this fight, I feel like Jim Miller is the kind of guy, you put your hands down in front of him, at any point he hits you with a left hook, you die. It's like, he is not known for being a huge power puncher or anything like that. But I do think the only disagreement I have is, like, I think he's gotten better. Like, I think that we saw Lyme disease Jim out there, like, phoning it in and just trying to get through fights and whatever. And now he looks like a renewed athlete. He looks like a guy who's recommitted himself to fighting. And it's not because he's got some grand allures. I'm going to be a world title. It was for this. It's to get back to UFC 300. My man had a goal. He's got the UFC 100 jacket on. For me, I can only bet on the Jim Miller side this weekend. I think there's a lot riding on him personally and professionally coming into this one. So it's a high pressure spot, but plus 150 on the old dog with a lot of tricks. I feel like it's a
watch it be a draw, man. Some Bobby Green shit draw.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too. Because the one of the thing is the grappling, I think, is going to cancel out here. Bobby, if they're sober, I don't think is getting submitted by Jim Miller. I think he's a very good grappler. But I think that if he gets rocked, like if he's doing the Jalen Turner dance in front of Jim Miller, I mean, Jim Miller is going to submit you. It doesn't matter who you are. So that's the one thing I wanted to bring up is, like, yeah, I think that the grappling is like a wash in a normal context. But one big shot later, it could be a wash for Jim Miller, who I do think has good finishing instincts. That's the one thing. It's like the reason he's had such career longevity is if he hurts you, he doesn't let you back in the fight. The fight's over. He's going to hurt you. He's going to take you out of the fight. He's going to choke you, and that's the fight. So I think that Jim's going to get the job done here, but it's a hell of a scrap, man. And I could just be buying the public narrative. I know he's probably going to be a public dog. I don't give a shit. I think he's going to be
the last time I bet Bobby Green as a favorite was against Thiago Moises. So maybe we do get it. We do get a repeat here.
And the thing is, Thiago is an underrated striker, but he's also a guy that's kind of had that same problem at times, not putting a stamp on it, not going out there and earning the rounds. And I just feel like in this spot, like Jim Miller is going to give you whatever he's got. At his age and all these things, he's pouring out the jug at 300 to try and do anything to win. And whether that's a Chris Weidman fucking double poke in the eye, bro, he's coming for blood. Them New York, New Jersey boys play for keeps. You understand?
I'm glad you brought up the sub, Liam. I was going to mention that actually that is the one thing that I think is like super live here, because if Jim hurts Bobby, if the chin is a little bit compromised, he grabs neck, right? Like he'll jump Gilly. He's got that squeeze. I think that's like a really good path to victory for Jim. Obviously, both guys I think can finish multiple different ways, or take this thing to a decision, obviously. But the Jim Miller sub, there's something about it. Everyone's talking Bobby Green chin, Bobby Green chin, Bobby Green chin. That's when Jim grabs the neck.
They forget the club and sub, bro. It was always the club and sub. But we can move to this next one where we've got Jessica Bate Estaca, the pile driver, Andrade, taking on Marina Rodriguez in the strawweight division. Fantastic fight. I think Jessica Andrade is in the right weight class here at 115 pounds. Showed off that knockout power last time against Mackenzie Dern, sent her flying all over the cage. How much do we take away from that? Hard to say. I don't think Mackenzie's been herself lately. I don't think she's been showing her best product. But I also think on the other side here, Marina Rodriguez coming off a nice win, coming off a good, convincing victory. But prior to that, I was fading her. I was making money. I was doing it mostly at underdog odds. And this was a closely lined fight early in the week. Steam's come in on the Andrade side. Kind of see it the same way. Marina has a clear path to victory. She's long. She can strike. She can move. She's got some power, some pop in her shots. But she's mostly knocking out women that are not very durable, that are a little bit older. And Bate Estaca has some fight years on her, but she's young. And she's mostly losing to women that are huge and way better grapplers. And that's not what she's facing here on Saturday. So she's fighting a taller woman, but a woman that's been taken down many times in the UFC. I think she could be taken down again in this fight. I think she could get hurt with shots on the feet, like we saw against Amanda Lemos. I think she can get beat up a little bit in this fight by Bate Estaca. But it's hard to trust Jessica Andrade to chalk prices. That's just the way it is. I bet her at minus 142 against Caitlin Chikagian, and she absolutely beat the life out of that woman. Poor Henzo Gracie girl. We wish her the best, but she beat the tar out of her, and that was a much bigger woman. That's a woman that's got a great process and has a great jab and all these things that you want to say that are nice. But then there's one girl that just had finishing power and came forward and executed. in this fight, both women have finishing ability. But I actually think that Jessica Andrade, more well-rounded, more finishing ability, more dangerous, UFC legend against a girl who kind of never accomplished what she set out to in the UFC. And if she doesn't win this fight, she's probably never going to, which is a title fight, a big opportunity. She kind of stumbles on the blocks a few times. Amanda Lemos, did she look like the next big thing in her title fight? No, she did not. She looked like she was well out of place, but she dominated Marina Rodriguez. I think that says something. So give me Jessica Andrade. Styles make fights, could go either way, but I think Andrade gets it done. And I think she's actually going to finish Marina Rodriguez as well. How do you feel, Rich?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I like the Jessica side. I think they're pretty much similar, but Jessica's obviously got the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling on her side also. And Jess is going to be a disadvantage when it comes to size. But she's always undersized in most of her fights, man. So I don't think that's going to play much of a part. I don't like Rodriguez's style, to be honest. The way she moves forward. I don't think she's very versatile in her attacks either. And I don't mind the submission prop for Jessica. Could be a guillotine in transition. We haven't seen a submission from her in a while. So that's calling to me a little bit. Since she
submitted a Lemos plus 600 for the kid.
Yeah, so maybe she's due another against another Brazilian. She Brazilian? She looks Brazilian.
Yep, it's Brazil on Brazil crime here.
Yeah, so maybe she gets another sub. But yeah, I like the Jess side, man.
There you have it. So 2 of us on Jess so far. Are you going to agree or disagree, my brother Clint? How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, man, make it 3 for 3. I bet Jessica Andrade. That was a side that I liked early on this week. And I know she's been a little up and down. I know she's been a little hot and cold. She was fighting to pay for that divorce. That's been kind of a whole big thing here. But I just think there's a levels gap here, right? Like Marina Rodriguez was somebody who, it's funny, when she got started in the UFC, I was super hyped on her. I loved her skill set. I loved her frame. I loved her knockout power. Didn't realize how old she was. Now we get to this stage of her career and it's like, well, she never really patched up the grappling. She's 36 years old. So you look back at the strength of competition, who's she beating? They had to run it back with Michelle Waterson to go ahead and get her a win. So there's a lot of things that it's not really headed the right direction. And even though Jessica Andrade has faced a real tough level of competition, you mentioned the 3 girls she lost to, all by finish, by the way, it looks really bad. But is she going to out-hustle and double-leg Tatiana Suarez? Probably not. Is she going to be hitting takedowns on Yan Jianan and Erin Blanchfield? Yeah, probably not. So we've got a huge grappling advantage. I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking here for Jessica Andrade. Is she going to use it? Not necessarily, but I think she's going to be smart enough to at least mix those takedowns in. You watched her against my girl, Caitlin Chukagian, death taxes and Chukagian by decision, but she mixed in a couple takedowns. She bullied her up against the fence. She did what she needed to in that spot. And I think she'll do the same thing here against Marina Rodriguez. We've just seen her put on her back way too many times. We've seen her taken down way too many times. Jessica Andrade should know the game plan here. And it's not like she's completely out of it on the feet either. I think she'll have a power, potentially a power advantage. I know she'll have a speed advantage. I like Jessica Andrade a lot in this spot.
Fair play, my man. And I think that this is a fight where she's got some clear on paper advantages, but she also has some liabilities. Shout out to my guy Ted in the chat. Says young but has been damaged, period. I do think she's got a lot of fight miles on her. But also she did outland Erin Blanchfield on the numbers in that fight. I thought she was potentially winning on the cards. Very close first round between those two. They went to war. Yan Xiaonan does have some power in her hands. Hasn't shown it in most of her fights, but has landed a lot of impactful strikes over the course of those fights, busted up women's faces before. So we knew that she had some power. I do think Andrade a little bit sketchy in terms of her ability to take damage these days. So I almost lean towards the fight not to go the distance at plus money as well. But it's an interesting spot here. John, how do you feel? Do you think that Andrade gets the win, or do you like some value on Marina Rodriguez?
I don't think there's value on Marina Rodriguez. I'm considering an Andrade bet. I'm of 2 minds here. On the one side, I feel like it's an IQ test, right? Because we all know, everybody knows at this point, if you're a hardcore in MMA, that if you want to beat Marina Rodriguez, take her down and she's going to lay on her back. And obviously Jessica is more than strong enough to do that. The problem is with Jessica, I never know, is she going to do that? Or is she just I thought that going into her second fight with Rose, and she didn't really show any urgency to wrestle. She just decided to strike with her. So on the one hand, I'm a little nervous that will happen here. And I do think Marina, from a technical and metric standpoint, is a bit better on the feet. I'll say this though, and this is why I'm leaning towards a bet. And it's funny because Liam, actually, you reminded me of this. I remember when we were talking about Jack Hermanson and Joe Pyfer, you made a comment that cracked me up, but I think applies perfectly here. You're like, I'm telling you, Jack Hermanson is afraid of muscles. He does not want to be in there with like strong people. And like watching Marina like against Amanda Lemos, I'm like, she had every tool to win that fight pretty easy. And it seemed like as soon as she realized, oh, wow, this is a woman who actually matches my physicality, she suddenly, all of the aggression you're used to with her dropped off a cliff. Everything did. And she just totally melted on the back end of that fight. It's like, yeah, Jess has gotten hurt before and she can get KO'd. But also, if you don't put her down, like she is going to keep coming at you like a zombie. And she's the harder hitter. She throws pretty vicious leg kicks. There's just a huge physicality gap. And the way that Marina looked when she faced that last time makes me think that if she doesn't like hit her with like an up knee up the middle or hit her with something big early here, she's going to probably break under that pressure. Plus, on top of that, it's like 36-32. Andrade's way more experienced. She's fought way better women in the aggregate here. I lean her direction. I'm leaning towards a bet. My only concern is just Andrade has at times showed a penchant for just going full cannibal mode, like off the jump and getting herself hurt. Obviously, it happened with Wei Li, but it happened with Yan Jianan as well. So that's my concern, but I'm leaning towards the Andrade side here.
There you have it. Unanimous panel. Jessica Andrade. That's who we're leaning towards here. I do think, Marina path to victory, but I just think Jessica Andrade, more tools, UFC legend. I think she's going to get the job done. Next up, we got Jalen the Tarantula Turner taking on Renato Moicano. Rich, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, there's a couple of fights that I don't care about, man, in terms of like coming for a breakdown. The other one's the Sadiq fight. Just because they're just close fights to me and I can't get a good read on them. And yeah, that's where I'm at with this one, to be honest. No bet. I don't think I'm going to place one on it. Just watch it as a fan. Obviously, Moicano, be smart to implement some takedowns, get the wrestling going. Maybe he can do that. But also he could maybe get knocked out. So yeah, I see it as a 50-50 fight, and I don't really want any part of this one either, as well as the Sadiq one, man. So yeah, it's a pass from me on this one.
Fair play, my man. And I did hear my brother Clint, I think it was on VB's show, do a breakdown of this fight. So I know he's got a passionate take. Why don't you take it away, Clint? What do you got here?
Yeah, so Renato Moicano, he's actually one of the guys that works with Homo Fight. They've got a different podcast show going on over there with him. And so I'm like, man, I gotta be careful on this one, because Renato's a guy that, frankly, I love the personality. I love the money Moicano, like all that stuff is great. But I've bet against him a lot. Now, granted, recently that hasn't been a very good path to take here. I did bet on him against Brad Riddell. I bet against him with Rafael Dos Anjos. I mean, so, mixed bag. I've been doing okay lately. But man, I just think he's going to have a real hard time taking Jalen Turner down. Jalen Turner is so big. He's massive for this weight class. I know that's been his weakness kind of in the past, but like even you look back at that Mateus Gamrot spot, and frankly, I think Mateus Gamrot is a lot better of a pure wrestler than Renato Moicano is. And that fight went to split, and I thought Turner should have won it. You know what I mean? He did some serious damage. It was difficult for Gamrot to be able to get the control time that he normally does. You've got Jalen Turner scoring, and last week maybe was a bit of a different circumstance, but more often than not, the judges have been favoring the damage over the control recently, and I think that's going to kind of favor Jalen Turner. I think obviously he can hit those long guy submissions with those long lanky arms if he wants to. I think he's got the big knees and elbows in close, and then Renato's really going to struggle with this guy at range. He's got 3 KO losses, professionally speaking, and he's been fighting guys that, I know, again, Dober, a big hitter. He's a guy that you're able to take down, though. I don't know if he's going to be able to get in there before he gets touched on Jalen Turner. And it's a 15-minute fight. There's a lot of time to take care of it. He's not going to gas out like Alexander Hernandez did. I like Jalen Turner here in this spot. I did go ahead and throw him in a parlay. Going to be rooting for Moicano from a home of fight standpoint, but Jalen has been my guy for many, many years. And I can't turn my back on him in a spot where I think it's a good match.
Don't worry. I'll defend your boy Moicano's honor when it gets back to me. How do you feel about this one, John?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I have similar feelings to Clint, but I said this to Chad on our show last night. Like, my general view of the fight is Turner's a giant physical freak. Like, I love Renato Moicano as a fighter. He's like one of my favorites, but most of his takedowns are upper body, and Turner does a good job whizzering and digging unders to the upper body. And it seems like obvious, which is what scares me, that Turner's going to defend those takedowns and then just pepper him down the pipe and put him out. Like, but it's kind of how I feel. The thing is, and what worries me is it seems like so obvious. And, if things were that obvious in MMA or betting, like everybody would be rich, right? Usually the most obvious outcome tends to be the one that doesn't happen, which is kind of what concerns me with it. But that is how I feel, right? Like, I think if Moicano gets him down, the jiu-jitsu, like, I know people saw Turner get up against Garbrandt a few times, and I know Gamrot's a great wrestler. Renato Moicano, and I'm sure you're going to dig into this, Liam, is much better, in my opinion, jiu-jitsu than Garbrandt. Like, legitimately not really even close from an MMA standpoint. And so, like, I think if he can get Turner down here, he's going to put him in, like, deep trouble on the mat. I think Turner, while he's fresh, is just too strong, too physical, and I mean, his frame is crazy, and he's so accurate at throwing down the pipe. But with that said, between Turner's gas tank and what I think will happen if Moicano can get it to the mat, I can't really have much interest in the money line here. The one thing I did think that could be kind of interesting, if you think the money line is right, is like playing the 1-2 on Turner, like plus 125, plus 400. Like, it doesn't sound that sexy, but like, surely if Turner's actually 70% to win this fight, he's like 55% to finish in the first 2 rounds. Like, I cannot imagine if this fight goes to round 3 at a high clip that he's not finishing early, that he's minus 230. Surely that's not the case. So that's kind of my thinking from a market standpoint, that maybe Turner 1 and 2 could be pretty good here. But yeah, I have no bet or real interest here. I think Turner's probably going to knock him out, though.
So what's the most likely outcome? I think John just hit the nail on the head. I mean, the most likely outcome is Jalen Turner, who's a huge guy, who's a dangerous finisher, who's a knockout artist, goes out there and knocks this guy out early. But let's just poke some holes in that. Let's say, all right, imagine that doesn't happen. What kind of fight are we looking at? I think that, you start to do some digging into this fight and you're like, holy shit, this is a little more complicated than I thought. Because at first, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, I'm a huge Jalen Turner fan, guys. When he was plus 108 against Uros Medic, I was there. You understand? Like, I've been around, all right? I had the sub prop against him. I had the sub prop against Brad Riddell. I've told you these guys were Fugazi on the mat. But when you're talking about this fight, Renato Moicano's not Fugazi on the mat. Okay, so like a bunch of these other guys. By the way, it would be the best submission win of Jalen Turner's career by far. Not close. Like, submitting Brock Weaver, what the fuck are we talking about, okay? Like, you just have to get serious about some of these things. Like, Moicano is that guy. He's a really serious fighter. He has been for a long time. And when you look, he was fighting at 145 against legit guys. Calvin Kattar, he absolutely tuned him up like an old guitar. There was no grappling. You understand what I'm saying? Do I need to repeat that for anybody in the chat? He tuned him up like an old guitar. There was no grappling. It was all low kicks. It was all dancing on the outside, moving, head movement. Calvin Kattar couldn't box him. Couldn't find him. Couldn't get close. Now, obviously, we're up at 155. He doesn't have that same size advantage. He used to cut a ton of weight. And that's why he was so compromised physically. You hit this guy to the body, he was like seeing a ghost. Like, oh my God, how did this just happen? Because he was cutting all the weight out of his body. He was cutting all the water out. He's literally thin, gangly. It didn't look good. Now he's at 155. And the only guy who's knocked him out at 155 pounds is Rafael Fiziev. The guy who came close was Drew Dober. These are like real knockout threats. By the way, I had 3 units on Fiziev minus 140 or whatever it was in that fight. I was like, yeah, let's find out if this guy can do well in his move up to 150. Even in that fight, though, it's like he's moving up. Like, there was kind of some uncertainty there. He had been at 145. It's like, how is he going to find his footing? The biggest bet that I placed on a Renato Moicano fight ever was 7.5 units on RDA. Short notice or not, give me RDA to beat this guy's ass limb from limb on 5 days notice. That's what I was making the wager on. I'm like, yeah, minus 175. We'll pay to find that out. And when I think about this fight, I say to myself, okay, Renato Moicano, elite record in decisions. Like him or hate him, 8-1 in decisions. How about on the other side? Never won a decision. Never. Came close, right? Garbrandt, maybe I'll push him over the edge there. But the other thing is, Garbrandt is hurtable. Garbrandt can get knocked out. I said it against RDA. I was like, don't be surprised if he goes out there and knees him in the head. He knees him right in the head. The guy's stumbling all over the place. And then he was able to get on top, use his wrestling.
Can't believe we didn't cash that.
It was unbelievable, Clint. They stole that from us. But when you look at this, I just say to myself, like, RDA on 5 days' notice beats the absolute piss out of this guy for 20 minutes. And he never quit. He never broke. He didn't look for a way out. He never said, hey, no mas. He literally got better as the fight went on. After taking a life-altering beating, in my opinion, in rounds 4 and rounds 5, whether it was like a mercy from RDA or he was starting to get fatigued, he stopped throwing as hard. He stopped trying to commit to his shots, and Moicano was landing. I was like, what is happening right now? Moicano fought his ass off there, and I think that showed. He's got heart. He's got toughness. He's got a willingness to push. So the question is, does he get finished in the first 7 minutes, Or does he win the fight, in my view? Because Jalen can win this fight if it goes long, but he hasn't proven that. He hasn't shown that. He hasn't given much reason to believe that. If you're getting out-grappled summarily by Dan Hooker in the third round, Moicano can't summarily out-grapple you in the third round. It's like, that seems a little bit fugazi to me. So I think that all in all, the pre-fight, like you could look like Jalen Turner's minus 5,000 in this fight. If he wins, how he's supposed to win. But if he doesn't, guys, it's going to look like a lot of other times when Jalen Turner was minus 2XX. And that's normally not something he pays off. I think that when you look in the past at plus 108, at minus 110, at minus 120, Jalen Turner's your guy. But once you start creeping up over minus 200 for a guy who is a known gasser, who's been knocked out in the first round, hear me again. He's been knocked out in the first round just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Against Gabe Green, I believe. Or if not, he knocked out Gabe Green, but he's been knocked out 4 times by guys you never heard of. It's like he's just not been a lights out guy at this price. So 70% indication does feel to me a little bit high. And Moicano's a guy that's fought the best of the best. And he's lost to some of those guys. Korean Zombie, Jose Aldo, Rafael Fiziev, and RDA. Those are world championship level fighters. So it just doesn't seem to me like he's a bum. He's a washout. He sucks. He's 34. He's a good fighter. He's fought the toughest guys, and I think he can still win. So tough fight, though. He might get knocked out brutally, but he'll find out.
I will say this. I think he has underrated physical strength. I had bet him minus 125 against Dober and cashed it out before the fight because I rewatched Dober and Benny everybody knows is strong as an ox. And I was impressed how Dober held up in the clinch in that fight. And I was like, I don't think Moicano can do that to him. I don't think he's strong enough. And then Moicano was tossing Dober around like a sack of potatoes. So I do think he's probably stronger than the market gives him credit for.
I tend to agree. And normally Jalen Turner is massive compared to his opponents. Uros Medic is a 0 on the ground. No disrespect, but that was my handicap for that one. I was like, he's going to submit this guy because this guy can't grapple. And then my cap for the, the fight with Brad Riddell is Brad Riddell's tiny. He's going to hurt him. Brad Riddell shoots in every fight, no matter what. He's going to get submitted. And he did. But it's in this fight, if he shoots, if Renato Moicano shoots, is he just easily going to get submitted? I don't see that. Unless he's on completely, rocked, wobbly legs, I just don't see him getting submitted here. So that, for me, is what changes the equation. Jalen Turner's live to win by knockout. He always is. But I just worry that if this fight becomes extended, he's not going to look like a minus 250 favorite. And I would argue he almost never has. Even in that Garbrandt fight, you want to say he won it? I agree. You want to say it was minus 250? I disagree. It's it was a very close fight.
Wasn't he a small underdog in that fight, though?
Against Garbrandt?
Yeah.
No, I believe he was a substantial favorite. Let me check. I don't want to.
I bet Garbrandt minus 170 in that fight.
Yeah, Turner was plus 180, so he wasn't.
I am a fool. I am a fool. What fight am I thinking of for Jalen Turner?
The Hooker fight,
where he was
probably
a big favorite and lost. Yeah,
the Hooker fight.
It was minus 300 against Hooker. My apologies, guys. Great point. So I've been looking at too many odds information this week, guys. Call me on my shit if I get something wrong, because I have about 50 million trends swirling around my brain. But next up, a fight that, like my brother Rich, I don't have very strong thoughts about. A lot of the community does. I do lean towards the Diego Lopes side, but he's taking on Super Sadiq Yusuff in a 145-pound banger. 2 guys that have finishing ability, but I think the more proven, guy who's willing to take risks is Diego Lopes. Is that going to pay off for him against a guy who hits this hard? I don't know, but I also think he's a dangerous submission grappler. I've been extremely impressed with his work on the mat, and I think that on the feet, he's fearless. He's willing to take these huge risks, and I do think that Sadiq Yusuff can be clipped, can be knocked out, can be rocked. So those are my whole thoughts on the fight. I think it's probably going to end violently. If it doesn't, I would probably favor Sadiq in a decision because he's a little bit more proven in terms of process. But I'll also just say the Joanderson Brito fight that a lot of people are bringing up, who wants to fight Joanderson Brito? And by the way, he almost submitted him a bunch of times. So it just seemed to me like Diego Lopes is live in every fight. But is he always going to look like a favorite? I think that's very infrequent to happen. So interesting spot. Clint, how do you feel about this one, brother? We'll kick it to you and mix up the order a little bit.
I just got to get my best Diego Lopes hair going here for you while I can. No, I love Diego Lopes, guys. I really do. The problem for me with this fight is I think the line is backwards. I am cheering my ass off for Diego Lopes. I love the guy. I want him to be the next. I want him to be the next Steve Ercik. I want this guy to come out of a freaking cannon, and I want Movsar Evloev to cash my champion bet by the end of the year, and then I want those two to rematch the first of 2024. Okay, that's the master plan in my brain. I want to see it happen. But at the end of the day, when I actually watched this fight, when I watched the tape, when I broke it down, This is such a prove it spot. Now, it doesn't mean that he should be the underdog. It doesn't mean that he's going to lose this fight, but this is a big, big step back into the contender circle, right? Like, he disposed of Gavin Tucker. He took out Pat Sabatini. That's a big, big drop off from the contender circle in this class. Sadiq Yusuff, I was telling everybody on my podcast on Monday, the Edson Barboza fight went completely differently than I remembered it in my brain. Like, I remember a one-sided ass beating from Edson Barboza. I remember that fight being just one-way traffic the whole way. It wasn't like that. Like, this guy almost killed Edson Barboza in the very first round. And then in a 25-minute fight, after like cardio and adrenaline dumping, he still went 25 minutes. He still put up over like 150 significant strikes in that fight. It was an unreal performance. It's one where, in my mind, pre-tape, Sadiq Yusuff's stock went down. It shouldn't have. It shouldn't have gone down. That was a beautiful fight against a legend in the sport. And he was very in that fight all the way through it. The one worry I have about Sadiq Yusuff is he does get hurt a lot, right? Like, you watch back some of his fights, he gets chinned a lot, he gets wobbled a lot. He always pulls through. He always manages to come through, except, you know, the one time.
The Arnold Allen fight comes to mind.
Exactly. And, you know, even a couple times in the Barboza fight, it just, he doesn't seem to ever get pushed off the cliff. So this is the kind of guy where I'm like, it's coming. It's coming. You know what I mean? Like, eventually he won't catch that second wind. Nate Landwehr is the only guy that can do that forever. So I expect eventually someone's going to clip him and put him down. I think kind of like the Jim Miller spot, the club and sub might be super live here for Diego, because Sadiq Yusuff has a good ground game. He's got good defensive grappling. He's not a guy you're just going to choke out willy-nilly. Even though Diego Lopes is incredible on the ground, I think he's going to have to hurt him first. But if he does that, it's open season. I'm picking Diego to win this fight. It's a heart pick. I was gonna bet him, and then I realized my opinion on the line, and it's probably backwards. So I'm passing. I'm gonna watch this one. I'm gonna cheer for my guy. I hope he wins. I think the sub is super live here, but this is a big step up, and I'm just gonna root for my dude. I think Diego Lopes can win this fight. Will he? I'm not entirely sure. It's a big test for him.
Yeah, step up, but I think he's earned it. I think he asked for it as well. So let's see how he fares with it. Rich, what do you think about this fight? I know it's one that you don't have much on. Did you have any thoughts on the matchup? Any like top line thoughts on the fighters?
No, not really, man. Everything you guys said. If I had to make a pick, it would be Sadiq by decision.
There you have it. And John, how do you feel about this one, my man? Do you think there's some value on Sadiq, or do you like Diego Lopes? I know he doesn't fit your typical mold, right? Like a guy who's just a wild spamming guy.
Diego Lopes is the kind of fighter I am going to lose thousands of dollars fading in his UFC career. I'm trying to get better about that kind of thing. Like, we'll talk about Jiri in a bit, but he's another one that kind of has like fit that mold for me. I did bet Sadiq small here. Ordinarily, like, he checks a lot of boxes that I'd like to check to bet someone big. But I mean, you guys all touched on it. We all know Sadiq is a bit chinny. Like, Sadiq has a tendency to find disaster, and Diego has a tendency to make big moments happen. That's the kind of like car crash that is like not ideal for a bet near pick'em. But with that said, I mean, just the level difference in what these guys have been fighting is so different. Like, you referenced the Arnold Allen fight, Liam. Now, that illustrated on the one hand the worst parts of Sadiq, that he can drop minutes off big moments. But also, Arnold Allen's a guy who was plus 130 to Max Holloway like a year ago. And Sadiq pretty much dominated on minutes in that fight. He just got hurt a couple times in it. I think he's just, like, you go back and watch Lopes and Evloev, and obviously it was a short notice fight. So, I mean, I'll give him much of a pass there, but Evloev's not a great striker. His bread and butter is grappling, and I mean, he lit Lopes up on the feet in that fight. And Sadiq is much more efficient standing. Like, when it comes to actually making reads in the pocket and like in extended exchanges, I just trust Sadiq significantly more there. I think calf kicks could play a huge factor in this fight. Sadiq throws him really, really hard, and I don't think Lopes has been in there with anybody like him that does that before. And in the grappling, I'm not going to say I don't think Sadiq's a better jiu-jitsu player, but I do think Lopes' opportunism and how many subs he has is kind of coloring potentially the grappling here. Like, Sadiq's a Lloyd Irvin guy. He's been there for like 13 years. You know, that is a great jiu-jitsu gym. You can even see it when he's been on the mat. Like, the guy is not a novice on the ground here. I don't think he is going to – it's like one of these situations where if Lopes gets a takedown, Sadiq's getting insta-sub. You can tell he knows what he's doing. You can tell he doesn't panic when he gets put on the mat in bad situations. And I think that's a big deal because, like, I bet Pat against him primarily because I was like, all right, D1 wrestler, Northeast BJJ, like, he is going to mind his P's and Q's. Pat just couldn't get a takedown and then folded, as Pat tends to do if he gets hit a bit too hard. But I think Sadiq, if he stays conscious here, like, I'm honestly more worried about him getting knocked out than I am submitted. I think if he stays conscious, he's going to dominate minutes here. I trust his cardio a bit more. And I just trust, the guy's like a 10-fight UFC vet at this point. Who's like, or 9-fight UFC vet is like 7-2 in the UFC. Like, I rate that pretty highly. Yeah, and I think all the recency bias, when you talk about this fight from a market perspective, like Lopes came in super hyped up. He's won 2 fights by finish in a row. Sadiq, obviously fresh off of losing that fight to Barboza, where he was a -180 favorite. I think it's the perfect time to buy low on Sadiq here. I'm only doing it small because, again, there is obviously a huge moment upside on the Lopes side, but I like Sadiq here.
Yeah, that's totally fair play to me. I think that the thing that I don't like about Sadiq is that he can be clipped. And I think that if you can get clipped, your jiu-jitsu falls apart, right? Like, it doesn't matter how good you are and how trained you are. So that's the thing that I find worrisome for him. But I do agree with Rich that if this fight goes to the scorecards, like, based on process, based on the fact that Lopes is willing to take a lot of risks, pull himself into guard, these kind of things, just doesn't set you up well for a decision more often than not. So don't like laying chalk on guys that aren't going to put themselves in a position to succeed long term. But I like finishers. I like guys that can go out there and put the fight away in 2 minutes. Why spend 15 minutes when we could do it in 2? And I think that Diego Lopes has kind of been that guy. He's big. I think he fits the mold of like what the UFC wants to promote. Guy that will go out there, call his shot, fight anybody on short notice, do whatever, and knock people the hell out, submit people, get it done quickly. I think they like it. So I think they tried to give him a winnable fight. And like, hey, here's the step up. It's hard. You got to make a leap, but you could win this one and go out there and chin this guy, and we'll do something special with you. And I think that's what they're trying to see. But it's still got to be in his hands. So great fight. I'm excited to see how it shakes out. Next up, fellas, we got Holm taking on Kayla Harrison in one of the most, wide odds on the card, right? Obviously, we got the Bo Nichols, but this is one of the widest line fights on the card. And we've got a UFC debutante here in Kayla Harrison. She's done great work in the PFL, most of it at 155 pounds, did some work in Invicta at 145, I believe, as well. Now coming all the way down to 135 pounds, not because she wanted to, because she was told this is the place or get the F out, because they basically have just shut down the talks of 145. They told everybody, hey, get down to 135 or just go pound sand somewhere else. And so everybody's been cutting down to 135, right? If your name's not Amanda Nunes, the fight will be at 135. And I just think that when you're looking at this spot, like, Kayla Harrison could be the real deal. She could be all that. But you go from fighting in the PFL, which I've been to PFL shows, guys, and I love and respect anybody who's out there putting on fight shows because there ain't that many of them. But let's be serious. It's more like fighting in a high school gymnasium than fighting in a major arena event like the UFC. I just think it's a difference in class, a difference in feel. And when you're looking at these kind of shows, like Kayla Harrison, been promoted as a star, goes out there, cuts the promos, she does a lot of things right. But I also feel like that fight against Pacheco left some doubt in my mind because I thought the cardio was flagging. I did not think that she was doing great with her control on top. And I do think that what we've seen from Holm is she has not been very easy for people to summarily out-grapple. Can people catch her? Yes. They could catch her in a hold, put her out. Ketlin Vieira, I had her by sub. She almost submitted her, right? Caught her in that near choke. I do think that we've seen Holly make some positional mistakes, but she's brought in some jiu-jitsu instructors to do private. She's working with Christine Cyborg. What's the difference in my view between this fight and fucking fighting Mayra Bueno Silva in the Apex? Everything. Like, one fight, who cares? Who gives a shit if you win or lose against Mayra Bueno Silva in a fight nobody's watching in an Apex center somewhere in a warehouse? Maybe she feels the same way about this one, but I don't think so. I think now she has something to prove. I think now she has a reason to be motivated to fight. It's UFC 300, big card, a lot of eyeballs. Everybody's paying attention. And her UFC run has been categorized by the girl who won the big one and never did shit all since. And she has been 1-3, I think, as an underdog. Still produced a great ROI if you system better the whole way, because she was the biggest underdog in UFC history to ever cast. So when you look at Holm, there is a narrative basis. There is a world in which the 42-year-old woman in WMMA, where age isn't as relevant a factor. It's definitely a factor. We saw GDR, right? She looked slow and old in those grappling transitions. But what else did we see? she was what, 9 significant strikes away from winning that fight? Like if we're just being serious, if she gets on top at the end of round 3, lands a bunch of ground and pound, and the fight, nothing else changes, she wins that fight. So it's just like, that's the kind of margins that we were dealing with in a fight with Norma Dumont, active competitor, high-level girl, proven, maybe not at 135, but at 140, at 145 in the UFC, 7-2 in the promotion. No sneezing at that. Kayla Harrison's beaten maybe 2 or 3 girls that you've ever heard of. If you've watched this sport for a long time, you pay close attention, maybe you know 5 of them. She's fighting girls that you don't know. She's fighting anonymously. I could just tell you guys, like, yes, there is some press and some hype and some stuff around Kayla Harrison coming over right now. But I'll just say, like, no one knows who this girl is. No one. You go to, like, she's not a star. Holly Holm is a way bigger star than Kayla Harrison. So who do I think the public is going to be cheering for at this event? I think it's going to be Holly Holm. And I think that if this goes to a close decision, I think they might screw her on the cards. I think that if I'm Dana White, there's 2 reasons to bring her over. 2 reasons. And it's one of 2 reasons. I think it falls into 2 camps, which is number 1, I'm bringing her over to make her a star. I'm going to bring her in. I'm going to pay the money. Then she's going to be my star. I don't have to deal with her over there. We bring her in. But the other thing that Dana White has been known to do is bring somebody in to embarrass them, to have them lose, to get them a loss, to make the other promotions look like shit. And remind you, the reason you watch UFC is because they can't hang with us. They're not the same. They're not as high level. And whether that's true or not, it's marketing, baby. They've had a lot of guys come in that they paid some money to, and then they lost their first fight. So MVP comes in. He's plus 110. He's plus 120. People don't know if he's going to get it done against the ultimate flake, Kevin Holland, who I love. But Kevin Holland's a flake. He always has been. He has been since he was good at 185. It's like, I just think that now you're looking
Kevin
at
Holland.
In Holly Holm, who's been favored to win all these fights, John. That's the one thing I'll say. It's like, she's been favored to win half these times. I've been fading her. I've been taking the plus 200 on Ketlen Vieira. But now it's like, she has no chance to win against a girl who's proven nothing in the UFC, who is talented, who if she gets on top, she's going to have good positions. But it's just like, man, it seems like a lot of assumptions for me. Minus 450, minus 500. She lost some minus 700 outside the UFC in a fight that she'd won twice. Is there some regression? I don't know. But I'm just looking at it saying, like, God bless and good luck. Couldn't be me. I think that Holly Holm is the side here. How do you feel, Rich? Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you're betting Holly Holm then? Yeah. Sounds like it.
We'll see what the line does. But I will not be betting minus 500 Kayla Harrison, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm betting Kayla, not the money line, obviously, and I'm not parlaying it. I don't really do that. But yeah, prop of the week, Kayla by submission, managed to get 290. So I think that's pretty generous, to be honest. I don't agree with the, the fact that, like, Holm, she's only 42. It's funny to say that now, but that's the way it is with, like, OSP winning. My mind's gone blank. Who was the one last week, the oldie who had a good showing? You're on mute.
Chris Curtis. Court McGee.
Yeah.
Court McGee. Yeah. So yeah, these old folk, they're still getting it done. But Holm, man, she just looks like she's regressing too much. She looks super old. The silver submission wasn't a good look either. And yeah, I just think this is like not a changing of the guard because of, like, Kayla and her age. But yeah, just like a passing thing, man. I think Holly's just a pawn these days. I think she's being used for her following in this fight. I do think social media A-sides are like a thing on this card. Huge social followings, especially on the main card. But yeah, I think she was brought over because of Ali Sleaze. She's got a connection there. I think Dana's doing favors under the table with him. So yeah, I think that's why she's here. And I do believe what you say, man. Sometimes people are brought to the UFC to be embarrassed, but I don't think this is the case with this one. So yeah, Kayla by submission, man.
There you have it. I do think there's some upside on this fight not to go the distance. I think that at a very close line, I'd rather have that than the Kayla ITD, which I know is a popular look. I do think that Kayla ITD is fine. Like, if you think she's going to win and justify this price, I mean, then ITD makes a lot of sense. We have seen Holm submitted. We've seen her nearly submitted. I mentioned that Ketlen Vieira performance. I said, Holly, you were this damn close. I almost had you, but I did get her on the money line. So I've definitely been back and forth. But I do think fight not to go the distance kind of covers some equity on both sides in this fight. Because I do think, if you have an adrenaline dump, if you go out there and try and squeeze somebody for 2 rounds and gas out, Holly Holm can kick you in the head round 1, 2, or 3. And she's shown that in the past. She's done that to Ronda. She did that to Betchko. If you put your hands down and you look stiff and rigid on the feet, you can get kicked in the head and it's a fight. So I just feel like Holly Holm has a chance to win, but obviously the athleticism edge goes towards Kayla pretty substantially. Clint, how do you feel, my brother? What do you got here?
Yeah, don't remind me about that Betchko fight, man. That last second hail, I was doubled over in pain, man. I was like, is she really about to lose 30-27 to Betch freaking Kohea before the head kick in round 3 that saved everybody? Oh, ridiculous. No, I couldn't agree more with Rich. This is a spot where I love Holly Holm. All right. I love Holly Holm. She's been on the gear for the last, 15 years though, so anything new for her. For everybody else having turned back the clock performances, Holly's been doing it for a while. She really has to have like that physicality advantage over her opponents, and especially her last couple fights, man. The Mauro Bueno Silva spot, like I cashed in pretty decently on that spot, and I just knew it was coming. She's sticking her neck in these submissions, man. That's always kind of the Achilles heel for Holly Holm, the mental slips, when in round 5 of a title fight that she had won 22 minutes of, like that's always kind of been her thing. I don't think that's by accident that they're putting her in here against someone who's supposed to make a big splash, someone who's supposed to be a big star, someone who happens to have solid grappling credentials. I think that's kind of the game plan that's being put out here. And on top of that, I think the overall master plan is at the end of the year. This is a dangled carrot for Amanda Nunes to come on back into the octagon, man. We're going to set up a star that you haven't beaten yet, and it's just to get Amanda back. So it's not setting up, Kayla for imminent success. It's to get the GOAT back in the ring for one more time at the end of 2024. So I do think Kayla's going to probably end up being a bit of a throwaway piece here, but it sets up a fun conversation. To do that, she's got to win. So they gave her someone who I think she can beat. I want to see Kayla get on the scale first. That's the big thing. And I know a lot of people are probably thinking the same as me. She looks way sucked out. Her arms are no small as in C-jacked, and the physicality advantage is going to be on her side. Can she go the full hard 15 minutes? That's a great question, and that does worry me at least a little bit. I kind of like the inside the distance look myself, just because one thing I think people might not be mentioning is that she has access to elbows in this fight. In the PFL, no elbows. They don't want people getting cut up. It takes longer to heal. They've got their tournament schedule. They got to get you back in there as quick as possible. No stitches. So they say no elbows. They've got elbows here in the UFC. So while I actually on Monday gave Holly credit for being tough, hard to knock out, ground and pound with elbows is a different story. The referee could step in and save you when you're drenched with blood. The referee will step in and take a look at you if they can't get, a gash over the top of your eye shut between rounds. So there's a lot more room for the TKO than I was initially giving this credit for. However, at the end of the day, I just think Holly is meeting somebody who's 9 years younger than her, 2 weight classes larger than her, and eventually she's going to end up in a bad position where she exposes her neck like she's done every single time in the past. I do think it's Kayla Harrison. I do think it's Kayla by sub. But like I said, I think the inside the distance isn't a half bad play just to cover in case she works her way to like back mount or mount and goes to work with elbows.
Fair play. I think that makes sense, especially if you're on the Kayla side. All right, close us out. John, how do you feel about this matchup? Am I out to lunch on Holly Holm?
I mean, in theory, I agree with your perspective. Like generally, hyped fighters coming into the UFC against 20 fight UFC veterans or 10 fight UFC veterans is something I almost always want to fade, especially at dog. But there's 2 different things at play here, which is why I'm not betting home. And the first is I told myself this year, look, now, can the UFC force what they want to happen? No, they can't. Like we've seen that before. They wanted Edmund Shabazian to fight Edmund at 20 or to fight Izzy at 22. So they gave him Derek Brunson, and Derek Brunson mopped the floor with him. Didn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work out, right? But they do generally do a reasonably good job of picking spots for fighters they want to win fights, right? And if you wanted to get Kayla, like Pepe said in the chat, Clint said it, if you wanted to get Kayla on a trajectory for the quote-unquote super fight with Amanda Nunes, well, what's the best way to do that? Have her beat 42-year-old Holly Holm and then give her Raquel Pennington. And it's like, well, if she can't beat Raquel Pennington, we don't really want this fight anyway. But if she can, that's great. I don't personally think Kayla is headed towards some superstar trajectory in the UFC. I mean, she basically has been beating up housewives in PFL outside of Larissa Pacheco, if we're being completely honest. I mean, I go look at the women's 155 division for it's it's rough. I mean, both Bellator women's divisions are way better, and that's like saying something. But with that said, she is big. She is physical. Like, you saw a picture of her next to Justin Gaethje today. She looks the same size that he does. The biggest concern for me here with the Holm side is I bet Holm huge against Mayra Bueno Silva at like minus 140. It was probably the low point of my year last year because I was like, I know what Mayra Bueno Silva is. She is a low volume gasser who can't get off her back. Like, all she has is guard subs. That's it. Like, this should be Holly all day. Now, the sub isn't what bothered me about that fight. Anybody can get caught in a ninja choke. You know, if that gets tight, if the bite's hard enough on it, it doesn't really matter. The fight's over. But it was everything prior to that. She looked slow on the feet. She looked wooden on the feet. Like, Mayra was keeping up with her on volume. And I was like, how, like, I mean, I knew she could slow down because she's 42, but it seemed like pretty clear that's what happened. Because I think almost every version of Holm prior to that one wins that fight on the feet, like, very, very easily. Even going back a year prior to that, and I believe both of you, Rich and Liam, cashed on Ketlin against her. You go back to that fight, and like, I thought Holly looked fine there, but I thought it was a clearly starting to kind of slow down and hit the backside of her career type deal for her. And now she fights Kayla, and like, we all know what Holly wants to do these days anyway, the last couple of years. She wants to push you against the fence, kind of grind you there. But she's pushing a bigger woman there who's got the best judo game she's seen. I just don't think it goes well for her. And even like if this was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, I'd be like, okay, Holly can play the outside game, kind of stick, move, defend takedowns. Except that Mayra fight I watch, and I'm like, it looks like she is stuck in the mud here. Like, I just don't see her being able to kind of play that outside kickboxing game for 15 minutes the way she could at one point in her career. I think that's why she's pivoted so hard the last couple of years to being a clinch fighter, because her best attribute, I'd argue, is her physicality and her strength. Now she's fighting a bigger woman, a stronger woman who's actually probably better in those positions than she is. I just think it's a bad spot for her. I mean, if you bet Holly, I'd totally respect it. Like, it is a classic taking a step up in competition, betting like a step down in competition at plus 340. I just think Holly's best times are done, and I think the UFC is kind of setting it up for her here, for Kayla here.
Yeah, and I think that's very possible. The last thing I'll leave with on this fight is, you know, I think of Holly as a woman, that's been like a UFC lifer, right? Like, she came to the organization, she's been there, stuck around, and I think they like and respect those people. Does it always work out for them? No, it does not. But I think that they try and put them in positions where they can keep getting wins. And the Mayra Bueno Silva fight, I did think that if the fight got extended, if the fight went 25 minutes, Holly Holm probably starts to take over at some point. But you know what bet I had that didn't cash in that fight, John? I had Mayra Bueno Silva by knockout at 15-1. And the reason I had it was because I thought that Mayra Bueno Silva was underrated with her power. I thought she fought like shit against Raquel Pennington. We'll just call a spade a spade. We won't spend much time there. But I thought that Mayra Bueno Silva is not as bad as advertised, just broadly speaking. And I thought that was a winnable fight for her. I thought she was going to win that fight. I do think that Kayla would probably beat Mayra Bueno Silva as well. Styles make fights. But when you look, the one thing about Holly Holm is against people that are trying to take her down, especially with judo, no success for Ronda Rousey. My girl, Ketlen Vieira, I thought she was going to out-grapple her, take her to the ground, hold her on the ground. I thought she could compete with her physically. That was a way closer fight than I anticipated. Like, I thought Ketlen should be a favorite, and instead it was a very close fight where I thought at the end of the day, Holm should have been a slight favorite, and Ketlen got the nod on the night, and we're happy to cash the ticket, but it was super close. So I just think that at her best, Holly has gone out there and like tuned up recent title challengers like Irene Aldana for 5 rounds like it was no problem. So I do think that the grappling, like you mentioned, has been her bailout strategy lately, but it's also style dependent. Is she going to box Irene Aldana? Irene Aldana has real power, could have knocked her out, done her worse than, what she had against Mayra Bueno Silva. Meanwhile, in this fight, is she afraid of the striking of Kayla Harrison? I truly believe the answer is no. So if it's ground and pound elbows, different conversation, right? Those would be bad. But if it's on the feet, I was not impressed by Kayla's striking, period, point blank. Never have been. So I think it's a great fight. Think it's a fun fight, good matchmaking. We'll find out if Holly's coming or going and if they've got nuclear level steroids in Albuquerque, but I think they do. So let's find out how it goes. Let's see if she's hiding under the ring from the Rusada agents that are chasing her after this fight. But hey, I think it should be a good scrap. Next up, we got Calvin Kattar and Aljamain Sterling, and great fight. I mean, New York guy that I love in Aljamain Sterling taking on the Boston finisher, Calvin Kattar. I did mention on Twitter today, coming off of a knee surgery, is Calvin Kattar got injured in his last fight, but plenty of time to prepare. He had said, I'll be ready for, end of the year. And then he said, you know what, out of an abundance of caution, I want to do some extra work, make sure I feel good, come back first quarter of 2024. Here he is. He's ready to go. Big card, big event, big opportunity. We'll start with Rich. How do you feel about this one, my man?
Yeah, I'm buying the dip on Sterling, man. I like him in this position. I think it's either going to be him on the outside with his leg kicks, just doing a little bit more than Calvin, frustrating him, not being able to let him get in boxing range and get his shots off, or he's going to, backpack him, take him down and have success there. But I don't necessarily think he needs to get the takedowns. I think just cage pushing and winning minutes while they're in close quarters. But yeah, I like Sterling to get back on track here, man. Kattar, been out for a while as well, injuries, getting up there in age. So yeah, Sterling for me. The price is blown out a bit though. Probably best if you got in early. I don't know about now. I think it's like minus 160. But yeah, I like him.
Yeah, the price definitely got steamed out here. I think there was a time when Aljo was a slight dog. There was certainly a point where it was, pick 'em price, and now you're looking at minus 170s, minus 175s on the Aljamain Sterling side. How do you feel about this one, Clint? Do you think there's any betting value to be had? Do you like a side here? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go head to head with Rich on this one. We've been agreeing too much for my liking here so far for the show. No, man, I actually kind of have a bit of a spicy take on this one. I went hard in the paint on my show about Aljo. I think he's the most fraudulent champion with multiple title defenses.
How dare you?
The UFC. I'm just gonna go ahead.
On a show with New York and New Jersey guys. Come on, Clinton. I'm just
and here's the thing. I cashed one of the biggest nights of my life on the Jan rematch. Okay. I had the over. I had Sterling. I had Sterling by decision. I had Sterling by split. I quadrupled down on that read and hit every single one of those that night. Absolute insanity for me. I scored the fight for Jan. I don't think he won that fight. And in a damage over control era, I don't think he wins that fight if they run it back today. So I'm kind of counting both Jan fights as essentially very close and almost a little fluky. Everyone knows about the knee already, right? TJ Dillashaw with 2 arms beats the brakes off of Aljamain Sterling, guys. Like, I will die with that read. Okay, I know some people don't agree with me, but I think TJ's counter wrestling and striking ability are off the charts, and people have kind of underestimated him, and they hate him because of the the drug situation when he tried to drop a weight class. Whatever, is what it is. We'll never know because he blew his shoulder out and he's gone. I also thought Henry Cejudo won the fight against Aljamain Sterling. That fight was very close. It was very competitive. It was tight. But Henry, again, scored the bigger shots, and Aljo just didn't do a whole lot with the grappling. I feel like he's been kind of squeezing by these spots, guys. And then he finally gets outed against Sean O'Malley when everybody's on board and thinking he's the best that could ever be. And now he's moving up a weight class, fighting a guy who's very similar to Sean O'Malley as far as his frame goes, the striking ability, the difference goes. Calvin Kattar can wrestle, guys. He's got a 90% takedown defense rating. I think Aljamain Sterling is going to lose his size advantage moving up to this weight class. And yes, he put on additional weight, but he's talking about the weight here. One of the things that it's always been a concern with Aljo has been his gas tank. Now, granted, in a 3-round fight, that's maybe not such a big deal, but the 10 extra pounds of muscle on his frame is. His cardio situation look like camp with professionals. I'm sure they have prepared, but when you're going in there and trying to physically muscle a guy who weighs a lot bigger than everybody you're used to fighting recently, that extra muscle and that extra effort could drain the gas tank a little bit quicker than you're used to when you've been doing cardio for 2 weeks to get your weight down. So I think there's a lot of questions about Aljamain moving up. I don't know how his game is going to translate at this weight class. Calvin Kattar might be coming back off of an injury, yes, but like you said, Liam, I think he did it appropriately. I think he prepared, and I think he's going to have a whole lot more volume than somebody like Sean O'Malley, who was able to knock out Aljamain Sterling. Aljo doesn't really like being hit. I think he's going to struggle with the range. If he gets him down and backpacks him for 2 rounds, so be it. He got me again. Well, he didn't get me again. I've been cashing on him, not against him. So yeah, I'm gonna flip the script and go against him in this spot. I think there's a lot of ways that Calvin Kattar is just the better man in this fight. And frankly, I don't think the UFC likes Aljamain Sterling in the first place. I don't know they're doing him any favors here.
Clint, I actually agree with a lot of what you said there. So I'm going to kick it to John before I give my thoughts, and then we'll see if Rich has any pushback he wants to give as well, because we're always open to debate and conversation. But John, how do you feel about this matchup, man? I know that you've got some affinity for our local hero, Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah, so I bet Aljamain every fight from the Marias fight through the Cejudo fight. When this fight first got booked, everything I saw was like, oh, horrible match for Sterling. I'm betting Kattar, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna bet Sterling at plus 125 here. It's gonna be great. Then that didn't materialize, and the line started steaming the other way. I'm not betting Aljo at minus 170. I'll tell you that. But what I will say is this. So I don't think he's going to have a ton of success grappling. I really don't. Like, the reality is, and Liam, I'm sure you'll break this down, but like, he's elite, got elite jiu-jitsu. He's got an elite top game. He's elite from the back. He's really not a very good wrestler. Like, he was a guy, I believe he was a D3 wrestler, if I'm not mistaken, but in the cage.
Stand up.
There it is. Yeah, you had Cindy Cortland. He like uses wrestling to break pressure, get guys to the fence, and he tends to do most of his wrestling work like muscling guys. I don't think he's going to be able to muscle Kattar on the fence. But with that said, one takedown and or a back take is probably a round of the fight. So that's always like nice upside to have in your back pocket. The reason I'm not taking Kattar here is, to a degree, I think we've seen this fight against Pedro Munoz, and it was a younger version of Kattar who also threw leg kicks, who has similar flaws that Kattar does and a similar game plan, which is a come forward, pressure heavy, high volume approach, but doesn't cut the cage particularly well. And all Aljo did that fight was dance on the outside, kick him, land the occasional punch, and get out of the way. Like, I agree, Aljo's cardio over 5 is not great, but over 3, we've seen he can actually like push a pace out there on guys. And he is not, his head strike defense is great. He is not easy to track at all. And Kattar, look, Kattar, if you bite down with him in the pocket, dude's got nasty boxing, nasty combinations, like decent head movement in the pocket. But if you move, he does not like. He doesn't shut down distance well at all. He can't crush space. Like, he's kind of easy to outmaneuver. Like, you go all the way back to the Hanato Moicano fight, the Max Holloway fight, the Zabit fight. All those guys did was kind of just refuse to engage him in the pocket and just kind of touch him up at will. And I kind of think that's what happens here. The issue and why I'm not betting Sterling is I don't see outside of a back take. I don't see a lot of finishing upside for him. And I will say, Kattar's 5'11". He's 4 inches taller. Sterling had a freakishly long reach for bantamweight with 71 inches. It's about average here. It's the same as Kattar. He can't really exploit that as much. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, if you can't get him down, like, he could outland him by 10 to 12 strikes in a round and just lose the round off 2 to 3 hard head strikes from Kattar, you know? So I think Sterling in the minus 150 to minus 165 range is fine. I'm not really that interested in Kattar. I just don't, off of that major knee injury at 36 years old with the inability to cut the cage that he has, I just don't have like a ton of interest in like, I just don't, I can't ever see him pulling away with this fight, whereas I can imagine Aljo doing it.
Fair enough. And I think let's start with Narrative Nation here. You know, I think that Clint hit the Narrative Nation on the head here, which is just like, I like Aljo, right? I think I'm in the minority, right? Like, I think me and John, you know, even in New Jersey,
love Aljo.
Getting half the cheers, right? Like, you just look
that
at,
was
like,
horrible. That was sickening.
Yeah, it's because you look at Aljo and he just doesn't translate because of the weird circumstances, right? Like, you win the title via that, you know, knockout. It's like, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to pretend you didn't win it? Are you supposed to never take a picture? It's like he takes a picture with the belt. They're like, you shouldn't have the belt. So I thought that all that got, you know, warped into just like, Aljo sucks. F this dude. He sucks at fighting. And then I thought it swung a little bit too far in the other direction, right? Like, against
how did that happen, Liam? He won everybody over.
It's a recency bias
Everybody
sport,
loves
man.
him now.
It's a recency bias sport.
He beat like the top 8 guys at bantamweight, most of whom convincingly. You know,
I'm convinced it was the TJ fight. TJ was the bigger villain for the first time ever, and suddenly Aljo's the hero for beating the brakes off of TJ Dillashaw. That's what happened.
I think that, and I also think people don't like to be wrong, right? So if you go out there and let's say you were all in on Petr Yan, then twice in a row you took the bath against Aljo. And then you're like, man, like, am I just going to continue doing this like the rest of this guy's career? He's a champion, he's this and that. And then you sell yourself on, okay, he's just the best. But styles make fights, as you and I both know. So when you look at this, like, okay, you got Dana White. Where's he from? Anybody know? Boston.
Boston, yeah.
Where did he send Aljo to? He sent him to Boston to get killed. Why? I'm going to break the fourth wall for a second. Okay, guys, I normally just try and talk about the fights and the matchup and the style, but let's just talk about why I think they set that up from a business standpoint. They wanted Aljo to fucking lose. They wanted him to lose in front of the racists of Boston. Hey, many nice people, I'm sure, in Boston. A lot of racists too, though, okay? Just look at the public opinion research. And they had him out there like, you're going to die. You're going to die. They're cheering, chanting anything they can against Aljo. They're celebrating his demise. They wanted him to lose. They wanted him to fail. They sent him there to do so. They turned him around on 3 months to do so. They wanted him to get embarrassed, and he did. For the emotional reasons that Clint was describing before, right? Like, I see the value. I can't do it. I could not bet against Aljamain Sterling. It was too much on my heart. I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I said, guys, for the love of all things holy, please have the sense that God gave geese and not lay minus 250 against an O'Malley in Boston. Live to find out. Like, if you are on the other side, just live to find out. But don't waste your money. And I felt stronger about the fight not to go the distance. I ended up even passing on that. I was wimpy. That was the easiest bet of all time. I think it's, again, another solid bet here. And the reason I'll tell you is this. Pedro Munoz, what's the one difference I would say? I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of the stylistic dynamic. Like, that is what Aljo needs to replicate on the feet to win this fight, in my view, because the striking damage is Clint, you just said it. He's 5'6". He's got like a 65-inch reach. And
tell me those kicks are going to work. Tell me you can flip a little weak kick that's not scaring a
and Aljo has
a guy
huge.
Like
Aljo's got huge arms for bantamweight. Huge reach for bantamweight.
Oh, hell yeah. And so it's not going to be like he's like way outreached or way outsized here, but it's just like now he's fighting somebody who's the same size as him. You're not going to have like a huge limb length advantage or anything like that. It's like, all right, big guy in Calvin Kattar, a guy who we don't have grappling footage from him. Like, if you just ask me who's better at grappling, Aljo, because he does it all the time. Like, that's the way you get better at something. You do it a lot. You show it off in your fights. He's offensive. That's where he wants the fight to be. So, you know, he's probably the better grappler. We could project that. But what we can't do is say, like, Kattar's a fish. Kattar's a bum. He hasn't been submitted since, like, 2008. He's been fighting professionally this entire time in between. And he just hasn't fought that many wrestlers and grapplers. That's just the reality. And Renato Moicano beat him up on the feet. He's probably the best grappler he ever fought. So it's like, you look at that fight, it was a weird circumstance. You think of Calvin Kattar, he's a guy that's kind of built for 5 rounds. So over 3 rounds, it's a little bit tough, right? He's got to go out there and get to work early. But Aljo is a guy that is either going to have to close distance to try and take him down, or to your point, he's going to be working on the outside, throwing a lot of shots. I think of Calvin as a guy who's willing to take a shot to give one back that hurts you worse. That's kind of what he did against Jeremy Stephens, right? Just standing in the pocket, like, oh, you want to land a couple shots? I'm going to make these ones count when I get you back. And I do feel like that's a really bad recipe for Aljo. So, like, the things that I've seen is, like, Kattar not great to the state of New York, okay? Shane Burgos, my local guy, pride of Section 9, baby, stand up. It didn't turn out good for us, right? He fought Calvin Kattar, and this is a younger Kattar. This is a guy that, you know, 2 guys on the come up, 2 guys that are both tough, 2 guys that both really wanted it, dogs coming together, swinging in the pocket in the middle. But the difference was the tact, the technique of Calvin Kattar, and the power. He just hit harder. Dude, when he was landing these shots on Shane Burgos, guys, I'm telling you this right now. If Shane Burgos was wearing shoes, he would have gotten uppercutted out of his shoes by Calvin Kattar. Dude, that is one of the craziest uppercuts you've ever seen. Shane Burgos has an elite chin. Josh Emmett landed everything he wanted to for 15 minutes. Didn't put him out. This guy, Calvin Kattar, hit him with an uppercut so clean, it'd make your head spin. So I do think Calvin Kattar's a guy who the public perception goes like the wind on this guy. Like, kind of like Aljo as well. Both these guys, the public doesn't know what to do with them. He's plus 200 against Giga Chikadze. Beats him within an inch of his life. But it's like, then you look at some of these other fights and, you know, Calvin Kattar goes out there. I believe he was favored in his most recent fight where he gets injured. And again, not really much you could read into that. Josh Emmett, he was favored in that fight substantially favored. And he won that fight between you and me. But they can't even get me on this one, okay? Because I did a write-up where I said Calvin Kattar wins by split decision. That was my official prediction on the fight. And I said, bet Josh Emmett if you want to bet on this fight, because there's more betting value at plus 205. And he won the split decision, and it was a complete robbery. But it's like, you look at these fights, man, and the reason that he lost that fight is the power difference. Josh Emmett was more powerful. So Calvin's getting in there. He's landing big shots, but he couldn't stay in the pocket because Josh Emmett throws back hammers. I don't think he's afraid of anything that Aljo throws. So I think that for Aljo, he's got 2 paths to win this fight inside the distance. They're both obvious. Take it to the ground and either beat him up with elbows like you did against Petr Yan, or go for a submission and choke this guy. And I think both of those are possible. But that's a lot of speculation. New weight class, a guy who said for the bulk of his career, I want to retire young. I want to be done with this sport early. I don't want to take a lot of head trauma. I don't need that shit in my life. I want to be a champion. I want to get to the top. I want to reach the pinnacle. Maybe he wants to get that two weight class, two weight class titles. That's what his new goal is. Maybe he's going to pursue it for 10 more years. But if he loses this fight, I would not be surprised if Aljamain Sterling said, hey guys, it's been great. Thanks for all the memories. I'm going to fuck off and do real estate. He's a smart guy. He's accomplished a lot of his goals and dreams already. And now it's kind of like, yo, I'm clearing the way for Merab. I got to get out of 135. So if I find out I can't beat 36-year-old coming off an ACL repair Calvin Kattar, what the fuck am I going to do the rest of the way out here? It's like, I do think he can win it. But again, it's like, if he doesn't win the fight, I think he's on the feet with a fucking killer for a long time. That's a dangerous proposition. So
it is. And I'll say this, Munoz is a hitter for bantamweight, but like the difference in power between a Calvin Kattar and a Pedro Munoz is considerable. Like I know Pedro is known for his durability, but if he stood in there and traded shots with Kattar, Munoz is the one going to sleep, you know?
Yeah, I tend to agree, man. And Kattar hits
Kattar
like
by
a
KO,
fucking truck.
boys.
I know people are saying that it's not the case. Like the reason I feel so bullish on this fight not going the distance is like Aljo's a menace on the back. He could submit anybody in the UFC if he's on their back. But if he's not, he's getting knocked out by Marlon Moraes. He's getting tested by Henry Cejudo. He's getting tested by a lot of these guys. And I thought Henry Cejudo won that fight. I also said, this is one of my biggest betting regrets ever. I said, Henry Cejudo and Aljo should be a pick'em. I said this months before the fight was announced. Then it closes pick'em. I bet Henry Cejudo. It looked like a fucking pick'em. And Henry still, I thought, should have won the fight, but he didn't, right? Aljo did just enough. He fought tactically. He fought smart. Oh, please go ahead.
And honestly, the jiu-jitsu in that camp, in Chartier's camp, is bad, if we're being honest. Or from what we've seen historically anyway, the MMA level jiu-jitsu, it does not seem like they train it very hard at all.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The one thing I'll say is we have limited footage. I think it was Ige and Fishgold.
No, I was saying to support like an inside the distance here. Like if Aljo gets the back there, like I don't. Kattar's a good defensive wrestler, but we haven't seen him put in a position with someone like Sterling on his back or anybody on his back. Really,
You got to get him down to get his back, though. That's all I'm saying.
it's true. It's true.
That Fishgold fight, I did think we saw like the right first level reactions. It's just about like Corey Sandhagen's a fucking good grappler. It just didn't matter, right? The guy's on his neck choking him instantly. So that's the kind of thing where I think early in the fight, Aljo is a menace. He's a problem for anybody. The later this fight goes, though, I think that Clint also hit the nail on the head with what does it look like to carry 10 more pounds of muscle into a fight? I think a lot of people are assuming they know the answer. I'll just tell you guys personally, like weight classes matter. They could be totally different. I used to wrestle up a weight and there was no problem. I thought these guys are slow. I'll beat these guys. But then sometimes I would gas myself out because I'm trying to move somebody 20 pounds heavier than me for 4 straight minutes. And it's like, eventually you do that. You can do it. You can move them, but you spend more energy than they do. You gas out faster than they do. And Calvin's not a zero wrestler, right? Like he comes from a wrestling background himself. And I thought that against Giga, against these guys, when he has gone to his wrestling, he doesn't want to. He wants to strike. But when he goes to it, it doesn't look terrible. So I think that in this fight where he knows he needs it, he's going to be drilling it. He's going to try and show up ready. And, he's got the game plan, right? The notes are out there on how to win this fight, but it's about executing. And often the injury, I don't feel so bullish on playing it, but it does feel like a dogger pass to me. And I love Aljo. I'm a huge New York guy, but just how I'm reading the market.
And hey, boys,
I mean, you can't.
Dana just announced $300,000 bonuses for everybody on the card. So violence.
We'd love to write a check to Calvin Kattar if he can knock out Aljo. I'll tell you that. It'd be like $330,000.
Already thinking violence. Now it's even more violence. I got KO Calvin Kattar in my pocket already at plus.
I will tell you this, Aljo. He's one of the most skilled fighters in the UFC, just from a well-rounded standpoint. But he's not the kind of guy, if he can't dictate like the fight getting to the ground, who really can cover large numbers because he just doesn't have he doesn't pack a lot of pop on the feet. Like you look at the Cejudo fight, he outlanded him by 45 significant strikes in that fight, and yet margins were thin because Aljo's optics are always shit. When he misses a takedown, he ends up on all fours with his hands on his head. He's a weird fighter. He's a very weird fighter.
Chains of the first Jan fight, which is a bad look for him for sure. But we'll have to see. On Saturday night, we get our answer. Next up, another fight that the community is dying to figure out how this one's going to end. Yuri Prochazka, he's back. Coming off that title fight loss, he's taking on Alexander Rakic, who's back off of a very long layoff, right? I think the longest layoff on the card, certainly right up there, because this guy has been out of activity since 2022, I believe. Injured himself in a fight in 2022 against Jan Blachowicz, and now he's 32 years of age, looking to make a comeback here off of a successful knee surgery. But I do think there's, it's interesting to see him favored in this fight. Like I get from a process standpoint why that makes sense, but I also just look at it and say like, how is Yuri Prochazka the more known commodity, the guy who's coming off of a title fight in terms of his level of quality? Former champion Jan Blachowicz, I thought was looking great against Rakic. Like, yes, he got taken down in that fight, but like standing, I thought it was extremely competitive, back and forth. And I thought that Jan Blachowicz was arguably landing the more damaging strikes with his hands. He did get busted up with a cut on like an errant jab in the early opening exchange. So it's like it looked worse for him, definitely after one round. But I thought he was actually landing the more substantive boxing combination. So it's not an easy fight for me to read. I feel like Yuri showed great work against Alex Pereira. He took him to the ground. He showed some fight IQ there, and then he got killed by a guy who's got an excellent left hook. Could have happened to anybody. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He cashed me 10 units against Glover Teixeira, so it's always got a place in my heart. But I'll tell you, boys, I know. But you look, dude, like all these fights, like I've been back and forth on Yuri. I had 10 units on him against Glover. I had 1 unit on Dominic Reyes plus 140 in a fight where Dominic Reyes knocked him out, right? Like Dominic Reyes knocks him out, and then he wakes back up and beats him. It's like this guy is just unbelievable in what he's willing to go through to win. So in that fight with Pereira, he did get knocked out, but he had gotten his leg shut down and was just like, fuck that. Like he just kept fighting like he didn't get his leg shut down. And I'm like, okay, impressive. Like he switches stances and just starts throwing again from the other stance. And I'm like, this guy is just very hard to deter. And I think about this fight, like Alexander Rakic, good takedowns, good low kicks. He's got some good tools. Is he as willing to throw low kicks coming off of a knee reconstruction? I don't know. I would be a little bit more skeptical of that. Is he, going to feel confident knowing that that's how he got hurt last time? The thing that people are dismissing is like, oh, he got injured against Blachowicz. After absorbing a bunch of low kicks, he takes an awkward step back, and then his other leg gives out. It's like that's the reality of fighting, right? It's like we're trying to damage each other. I damaged your leg so bad that you have to put too much weight on the other leg, and then it gave out. So I do think it's happenstance. It's a bit random, but it's also like if that had happened from a non-contact, like, hey, he's just moving around, and, oh, like my knee, it's a lot different than like I land 10 really impactful low kicks. You start to get awkward in your stance, step back and get injured. It's like we have to take into account the fight that happened up till then. And a lot of these other fights for Rakic, close split decisions, these kind of things. Yuri Prochazka, younger guy, more experience, and he's a fucking marauder who will go through the fire to kill you. Just seems to me like a tough guy to fight. Like I don't want to lay many prices against Yuri, period. So plus money odds to find out, is this guy for real? I'm willing to take those shots, but like, trying to fade this guy at chalk, not for me. I think Yuri's a real gunslinger. I don't think he's afraid to fight anybody. I think he could knock this guy's head off. I think he could submit him, but I think it could go the other way. It's light heavyweight. It's extremely volatile. Yuri is literally fighting with his hands down at his side sometimes, like swinging back and forth in the wind. You could easily die doing that, right? Almost got knocked out multiple times by Glover Teixeira. But again, it's just like, what is he willing to go through? Everything. Everything is what he's willing to go through based on his whole career. You go look in Japan. He was getting his ass beat in some of those fights too. Finds a way to win. And I think that he's fought the higher level of competition, broadly speaking. I know people don't want to credit those wins in Japan. I do. I think he fought real guys there. I think he earned a lot of experience, and that's why 2 fights into his UFC run, when he gets the title shot, he looks aces and he wins. Whereas a lot of guys, they get pushed up fast and they putter out really quick. And I just think that he showed, a very high quality so far in the UFC. So great fight, crazy fight, back and forth banger. We'll start with John. How do you feel about this one, my man?
I've been going back and forth on it. Like I've been leaning towards betting Rakic, but I mentioned it earlier in the card, and Yuri, like similar to Diego Lopes, is one of those guys who I just lose money on. I bet Volkan against him in his debut. I thought Volkan looked great until he died. I bet Reyes big against him. As you said, Reyes knocked the man out cold and then died. I bet Glover against him. I passed the Pereira fight because I was so scarred from those 3 fights. I look at it and I'm of 2 minds here. On the one hand, it's like I have a friend who's like a professional bettor, and he uses this term that I like, the variance blockers. Like what things, like what skills lower variance in UFC fights. And the biggest ones in my mind are leg kicks and takedowns. If you can be at a huge durability gap, but like if you can just get on top of somebody and they can't get up, like it doesn't really matter, right? Theoretically, Rakic could potentially capitalize on one or both of those. And so at minus 120, I'm like, he's got potentially big leg kick upside. He's got potentially big grappling upside. Like I kind of want to be behind that. The other side of that, or minus 120, I should say. The other side of that is I put a lot of stock into ELO, which for anyone who doesn't know, ELO is like how chess players get ranked or whatnot. But it's basically just like a ranking system and ranking by experience, who you've beaten and whatnot. Like whatever I want to say about Jiri or anybody else wants to say about him, look, I don't rate his technique, but he fights in a weight class where the best athletes are like B-, C+ athletes, and he's an A athlete. He's been fighting literally nothing but top 5 guys since he's got into there. Rakic, the couple times he's taken a real step up have been Vulcan. Now, you can argue he won that fight. I would argue he won that fight, and I bet Vulcan. But at the end of the day, he lost it. And Jan, and Liam, I even think you were being a bit kind to him about the Jan fight. Yeah, he got on top of him, and Jan plays jiu-jitsu off his back, because jiu-jitsu's not good enough to be playing jiu-jitsu off his back at light heavyweight. But outside of that, Jan was piecing him up, and that is... And now it's like another one. He's fighting a guy in the top 5 now. And like, as much as I get concerned about Yuri with calf kicks, it's like you watch the Pereira fight, and Yuri's leg was compromised 90 seconds into the fight. The dude, he is like truly the Bushido code. Like, he does not care. He's going to go forward until you kill him, And if Rakic was someone who had 10 fights in the top 5 to 8 under his belt, and I trusted his composure, that he could step back, Yuri's pressure wouldn't bother him, he could step off and just land his low kicks, time his takedowns well, I would be smashing him here. But that's a skill that comes with high-level experience. Like guys like Yuri, like Vulcan, like Jan, these are guys who have been fighting in the fire. Like, they are used to seeing what comes with fighting at the highest level of competition. Rakic really isn't, and I don't like that, from a technical standpoint in fights, his reaction isn't really to step off if you pressure him. It's to back up. Like, the absolutely worst thing you can do with a guy like Yuri when who closes distance as quickly as he does is to just back up. Now, yeah, Alex Pereira caught him with a check left hook, but that's not really Rakic's game. He's not really a counter boxer, His game is basically being a kicker and a wrestler. And I don't know. Because like I said, I think he's got these 2 skills that could potentially neutralize Yuri's game entirely. But the other side of that is, first of all, when you get on top of Yuri, he's got Brandon Royval, another guy who I haven't had a great history with. He's got that spaz mode where it's like, if you were a grappler, like I was or you were, Liam, it's like it doesn't look good, but it's hard in MMA to deal with a guy who won't stop flailing like that, an athletic, strong guy who just won't stop moving. Especially in the upper weight classes. So I'm not totally convinced he can hold him down. And with the leg kick thing, he basically needs Yuri to accept being kicked, And Yuri, he's just going to keep coming. So I think there is some equity for Rakic to dominate this fight, but at the same time, I trust the composure of Yuri more. I trust the heart of Yuri more. I trust that he's been in the fire with the top of the division more. And there was one thing, I don't put a ton of stock into interviews normally, but Rakic said something yesterday that really bugged me, because I was literally about to hit click on his side. They asked him do you think with a good performance you'd be next in line for a title? And he was like, well, yeah, if I performed like I used to be able to, yeah. And I was like, that it seemed like a very particular choice of words. Used to be able to. You've been out for 2 years. He just got a knee sleeve on his leg 3 weeks ago. I'm like, what is? I don't know what's happening here, but I've lost enough money on Yuri that I don't.
You know what's happening.
Yeah, I don't really want to be involved on the Rakic side. I see the angle. I think he could, if he fights the right fight, I think he could look great in this fight. But I don't really trust him to fight that fight.
Yeah, and again, things that work against him. Coming off a knee injury, hasn't been active. Not only just coming back from an absence, he goes from the apex to the biggest card of all time. And Yuri was just on UFC 295. That was a huge card, New York City, bright lights, big city. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so I just think that, this is a big culture shock a little bit. Whereas Yuri's kind of built for this. He's been in main events. He's been in world title fights. So interesting note there as well. Clint, how do you feel about this one, my man? It's dividing the streets.
I feel like I'm going to get the number from Merab's guy and go get some variance blockers from Turkey installed in my hairline. That's what I'm going to do. Got to just hit a big one here this weekend. No, man, I agree with a lot of stuff that John has said. I have been a well-documented Rakic hater. I don't get it. what is the hype on this guy? Why do you guys like this guy? I'm sure he's a nice enough person. It's fine. But he beats Justin Ledet, Devin Clark, Jimmy Manawa. I know he had that highlight reel knockout of Jimmy. Jimmy was the chinniest guy this division's ever seen. Jimmy couldn't take a punch. I could knock Jimmy Manawa out before he retired. Like, that's the level of pain we were dealing with there. And then in the Volkan Oezdemir fight, he was on skates, man. I thought he lost that fight. He was running for his life. He was backpedaling, and Volkan was just plodding him down, walking him down. And it was like, you're 3 inches taller than this guy. You've got so much more muscle than this guy. You should be able to out wrestle this guy. And Volkan was like, no, fuck you. I'm going to knock you. Like, he just kept on coming. He couldn't stop him. Congratulations, you out wrestled Anthony Smith. Anthony can't get off his back. Everybody knows that. Thiago Santos didn't have knees. He couldn't move. Congratulations. Like, this guy has never faced any adversity in this octagon, not once. Now he's 32 years old. He's coming off of an injury layoff. He's losing faith in himself. And you're going to put him in there against a wild man like Yuri, who's got 25-minute cardio, gets taken down by Glover Teixeira 5 times, gets beaten up over 100 significant strikes, and then taps the black belt out. Like, that's the guy you're going to put him in there against when he's never even sniffed this level of competition. Like, Yan was the first guy he was supposed to finally get the opportunity to step up in competition against. And he was maybe 1-1 going into round 3 in that spot after getting his ass whooped because Yan doesn't get off his back. Like, if Yan decided to stand up, that fight looks completely different as well. So he's going to be the guy who's hitting harder than anybody Rakic has faced. Rakic has bad tall man defense. Every single thing he throws. Go back and watch the Oezdemir fight. His hands are down here. He does this, and then he goes like that. That's all Rakic does. He's big, he's lumbering, he's slow, and he throws from his hip. He's hittable. I think a guy like Jiri is going to find him in there. Jiri is absolutely the weird kid in high school that just went all in on being the weird kid, and it worked for him, okay? He's the 1 in a million that it actually worked for. But because of that, he's insane. Because of that, he puts himself in weird random situations. He stands up fall and lets it beat the shit out of his body. He's physically freakishly stronger than everybody because the anime rules somehow apply to him. Like, I'm on Yuri, man. I like Yuri in this spot. I don't understand why he's the dog. I think it's a lot of recency bias. I swear if they ran Yuri and Pereira back, Yuri wins that fight. I would make the same bet that I lost piles on that night again if they gave me a rematch. But a lot of people, I think, see that fight and they're ready to just fade Yuri one more time. And I just don't get that. I think that this is a bad spot for Rakic. I have been waiting for the opportunity to fade Rakic at the top of the division for some time now. And I'm excited it's finally here. I'm betting Yuri.
There you have it. Yeah, man, I largely agree with you. I bet him against Pereira. I do think that was a fight where, in hindsight, maybe I didn't have any value. Maybe he was like a -110 or a +110. Like, I thought it was probably just a closely lined fight overall. And he did show he had some grappling upside, but he also showed that he's willing to strike on the feet and he has the susceptibilities to the low kicks. But in this case, like, Yuri just checks a lot of boxes for me, guys. I'll just be frank about that. Like, when you look, he's the bigger star. Like, some people were saying they're trying to build Rakic as a star. The 32-year-old Austrian Serbian, like, cheers to you, my brother Clint. I was actually going to announce that for the main card, but we're getting started.
Yeah,
early.
for the main card. I got that's the main card.
Hey, John poured himself a drink, and I'm like, all right.
That's my third. That's
I love it. I love it. I have a lot of catching up to do, boys. But in any case, what I will say here is, like, you just look at this guy, Yuri Prochazka, and why do I say he checks a lot of boxes for me? The one trend that goes against him is coming off a title loss. People tend to do very poorly in those fights, so I'm cognizant of that fact. But Yuri Prochazka, younger guy with more professional experience, a lot of it at a very high level, whether that's in the UFC or outside of it, fighting UFC quality fighters. And then when we've seen him inside the organization, it's been in the biggest fights, the biggest moments, the biggest opportunities. More often than not, he sees them. If he didn't, he showed that he has the heart, the willingness, the toughness to go out there and fight hard for it. And he also showed he could fight for 25 minutes. So he's got 15 minutes here against a guy who's been out for a long time, against a guy who has not been this active, and against a guy who's a little bit older, who has less experience as a professional. It just seems like Rakic has the tools to win. He's got the skills. He could win it, but it just seems situationally like a very tough spot to back him at chalk here for me personally, based on my process. So I think that great fight. Respect the people on both sides here, but I'm going to have to look at the Yuri side at plus money or passing here.
Also, let's be honest. Like, I was thinking about this today. I'm like, I kind of have a lean, but I'm not passionate. Like, why not root for the samurai guy who's like the most fun champion in like the history of the sport? You know, like just pass the Rakic side and enjoy the fireworks.
Exactly. Then if he loses, it's like, oh, okay, I dodged a bullet. If he wins, it's like we got to see more awesome violence from the samurai.
Exactly.
I totally endorse that. Well, guys, we made it. It's the main card. We got great fights to break down. We will say off the rip here, it was Rich's idea, and he has disappeared on us. I think that, it's pretty late over there as well.
Yeah.
So we totally understand. Appreciate him making the time. Hopefully he'll pop back on for the mush of the week. We'll see if he's awake for that. But in any case, guys, what we do have here is the main card previews coming down the wire. Excited to do it. If you guys drop a donation of, a serious amount in the chat, we'll all take a shot on this show for you guys. So that is the deal. We got some drinks handy hereby. I never drink on the show. I never drink, period, point blank in life. I have to find me a little random, mason jar in my home to try and drink out of. I don't know if there's a shot glass or whatever. And no sweat. If not, we appreciate it. We'd be here
Liam
anyway.
can't
but
find a shot glass, and mine are branded.
There you go. There you go. That's the difference. But that's why we bring on the professionals. We got our guy Clint. Our guy John already has a drink as well. So appreciate you guys being here. Thank you all for rocking with us. Let's talk Bo Nickal and Cody Brundage. Boys, I'll kick it over to you first. Clint, I think you have a bold take here as well. Why don't you fire it off, my man?
Yeah. Dana White just announced 300 bonuses, and it's inevitable. Cody Brundage, knockout of the night, baby. 300K in pocket. Let's go, baby. No, no. In all seriousness, I have been on a hell of a run right now. It's only been 2, so short sample size. But guys, back to back, round 1 KO, TKO, or DQ props on Cody Brundage. I saved the clip. I've got the clip. I uploaded it. And I literally involved the DQ in my handicap of the fight with Jacob Malkoun, guys. I literally was like, hey, bet it on DraftKings, not on FanDuel, because FanDuel does not include the DQ, and DK does. You want the DQ. It was 20-1, and I said, if he can't get out from under this guy, he's going to look for the door. Like, not only does he have all the power equity of a guy that can floor Rodolfo Vieira in the first round, but then he could also have that quit equity. 20-1, cash it. Jacob Malkoun, thank you for the elbow to the back of the head. And then with Zach Reese, he just did the damn thing himself. He just came out and bopped him right in the face the way we knew he always could. Like, Cody Brundage is a big dude, guys. He is big. He is strong. He can wrestle a little bit, even though he prefers to pull guillotine and put himself in the worst position possible every single time. Why, Cody? Why? I don't understand. But at the end of the day, Bo Nickal is so untested, guys. Like, I know he's this legendary grappler. I cashed a knockout prop with him against Val Woodburn, but who the fuck is Val Woodburn? I mean, like, that's what we're dealing with here. He has yet to be pushed. He has yet to be tested. Jamie Pickett is a human punching bag in the UFC octagon. He was never going to give any kind of a threat whatsoever. This is a big step up in competition for Bo, believe it or not. Like, that, people don't want to think about it that way, but it's true. This is a big step up in competition for Bo Nickal to be facing. I think Cody's round 1 prop is essentially his money line, guys. I'm mostly like having fun with this thing, but at 55-1, when I've hit the same exact prop back to back and I'm re-rolling it, why would I not go back to the well at 55-1? How many frauds do we see get outed at the UFC? Does Bo have a chin? Does he have a chin? We don't know. He's never been touched before. If he comes in for a double leg and Cody times a knee perfectly, that could be it at 55-1. So yeah, I got a round 1 Cody Brundage ticket at 55-1. I also think I'm going to play Bo Nickal round 2. I kind of like the KO. I like the round 2 because there is this aspect, I think, of Cody has been known as a quitter and everyone laughs at him, and I'm sure his DMs are an absolute nightmare because of it. But because of that, I think there will be some personal value in not getting finished in the first round. If he could take this thing into round 2, or if he could lose a decision, there will be some moral victory attached to that. I've got a feeling he might take like maybe an anti-violence approach if he doesn't get that immediate knockout. I also really want to see these guys face off. I'm not watching the presser with you guys because obviously I'm in the moment here with my boys breaking down fights. I want to see how they size up because Cody's a big dude. I'm curious how big Bo is in comparison to him. If Bo is the slightly smaller man, that actually helps this fight go deeper because if Cody is that big, muscly dude and he can survive some of these positions, it helps him survive submissions. It helps him get his guard back. It helps him pick himself back up and cage crawl. You know what I mean? So I think over's actually a little bit live. I do think eventually the cream rises to the top, right? And Bo Nickal probably finds his way to a finish. He's supposed to. That's what the UFC wants in this spot. We talked bonuses before. If Cody goes for broke in round 1 trying to get that 300K, he could leave himself empty, empty pocket with nothing. So I kind of like Bo TKO as for like an actual method of ending this fight. If he can get dominant position, tie up a wrist, climb the mount, pound this guy out, that kind of thing. I think it's TKO over sub personally. But I also think there's an argument that the fight goes a little longer than people are expecting. So I kind of like round 2.
You know what? I think you just hit a lot of the points that I was going to hit. So we'll see if John rounds out the rest of the points, but that was a great breakdown. From a money line standpoint, I mean, like, you'll just never, ever, ever hear me say like minus 2,500 makes sense in MMA. Like it's not the way I play the game. So, John, how do you feel about this one, my man? You think Bo Nickal value of minus 2,500?
I mean, probably. Or no, not Bo Nickal. Sorry, Cody Brundage. I thought you said Cody Brundage. I think he's probably value.
I was like, do tell. I mean,
no. No, I don't think he could be, honestly. Like, I'm trying to think about I don't want to sound too hot takey about it because, like, I don't really know what Bo Nickal's ceiling is. Like, he is the best base for MMA you could have, right? He's got that Penn State wrestling background, like the best wrestling background. He's obviously, I believe he rolled with Gordon Ryan. Like, he did a competition event with him as well. He's obviously been working on his jiu-jitsu. He's in a good camp. Like, the guy that, who knows? His ceiling is unlimited. But also, his floor is also unlimited. The guy's had 6 fights and hasn't been past 3 minutes in the first round against, like, literally the dregs of MMA. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I expect Bo Nickal to eventually be a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. But I'm also like, I think there are fighters in, like, the mid-tier at 185 that I'd be like, this should probably be a pick'em fight based off what we know. And he's now getting priced basically as if Cody Brundage is fighting like a top 3 guy in the division. Now, am I advocating for a Brundage bet? No, because it's like, I think Nickal in the 85 to 90% range is fine just because it's like he's obviously an excellent wrestler. We have seen Cody is the type of guy, if you show him the door, he's kind of willing to take it. He doesn't really want to face too much adversity in there. But at the same time, let's also be honest, it's the best MMA fighter Nickal's ever fought in his career by a fairly large margin, in my opinion anyway. Cody's got more threats both with his hands and jiu-jitsu than anyone he's fought. But
Jamie
yeah, I mean,
look, wants a word with Cody Brundage. He's like, let's find out. Let's find out.
That's going to be his ticket back to the UFC. Jamie. I'm
near you.
I'm like, I'm not going to bet Bo Nick or Cody Brundage. I obviously think the line is wide. Like, I feel like there's almost no matchups in the same weight class that are actually 96%, for one fighter. It's just not how MMA at this level really works. But yeah, look, Bo Nickal is a better athlete. He's a better wrestler. Cody, when he gets put on bottom, has a tendency to just kind of shut down. So he obviously should dominate this fight. With that said, though, I was having this conversation on my podcast last night with Chad. I'm like, I've seen books hanging 90-1 for like sub 1 out there for Brundage. And it's like, if he attempted 90 guillotines in 90 fights on the first takedown Bo shot, I feel like he hits more than one, Like, is that crazy? Like, I don't think so. But I wouldn't put anything serious on it. Bo Nickal should own him. I think there will be. I don't want to say there'll be a reckoning. I can't even say Bo Nickal's a fraud or not. We just don't have enough information to really have any relevant data. I know he's a better wrestler than Cody Brundage. I know he's a better grappler than Cody Brundage. He should win this fight. I would rather wait for a guy who, like, I want to wait till like Bo Nickal's like minus 400 against like Marvin Vettori, not Cody Brundage at like plus 1100. Like, let me get someone who's like a firmly top 10 guy who I know isn't going to quit the first time they get grounded in a fight. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have like $20 to $50 on some like stupid Cody round 1 props and stuff. But I'm expecting Bo to run through him. It should be him all day.
This is the way.
Yeah.
Just give me Marvin Vettori by knockout over Brendan Allen. That's all I ask for.
Yeah, run that one back. But what I will say is this, I'll be very brief on this fight. I don't have the strongest thoughts about it. Listen, I like Bo Nickal. I think he's a great fighter. He's made jokes in the past. He's like talking about getting a 3% return on your investment in 2.5 minutes. Like that seems like a great investment to me. He's right? So far he's proved, the reason why, hey, he's been a great, he's been a great competitor. He's been a great player throughout.
$25 in the chat.
Warrior, $25.
Getting the tequila out
from Greenbelt Warrior. Shout out to you. We appreciate you. We appreciate the love, and
let
we
the
will
games begin.
Oblige and acknowledge you as well. I literally do not drink, folks, so this is going.
Liam
to be
is drinking.
Absolutely painful for the kid. Maybe out of a chemically laced shot glass of whatever kind this is. Strange mason jar, full of alcohol. Not bullish about it. God bless.
Cheers.
Thanks for the support. Brutality. There you have it. So, guys, I'm going to make a quick EV point while my brain's still working. We have no guarantees it'll work the rest of the way out. From an EV standpoint, if your book offers it and you like the KO, take the ends by KO. If your book offers it and you like the sub, take the ends by sub. We're talking about a difference of 5 cents, 10 cents, 12 cents, 15 cents. And if you go out there and take that price and then Cody Brundage gets the upset, you'll feel like an asshole. You'll feel really dumb. Like, I had this and I didn't make any money when I could have, given up 10 cents of equity and made money. So that's just the one EV point I wanted to make on this fight. And I think it's like the longest standing advice I could give you. If you could get more outs for the same price, get more outs every time. And then you'll lose less money in this game. Please, John, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's something I've started doing with fight. I used to bet only GTDs on overs, especially over 1.5s. And I've started doing the, I'm going to bet a unit on the over 1.5 and a half unit on the GTD because I'd rather win on when it goes 8 minutes than just dump my entire thing on, the GTD and it ends 11 minutes into the fight.
Exactly. Or literally at the 14.5 minute mark and you're like,
yeah,
this was a great read and I have nothing to show for it. So I absolutely agree with you, man. As far as who I think wins the fight, I think Bo Nickal wins the fight. I do think that something that stood out to me in an interview this week, shout out to my dog who's also here. Scary proposition for the Bo Nickal minus 2,500 parlay bettors. My dog just entered the picture. But when you're looking at this kind of matchup, I will say, Bo said in an interview, he's like, I prefer it go to round 2. When you see these guys that just finish everybody in 30 seconds, most of them want more cage time. They want to get some experience. They want to, see how their lungs feel. They don't want to just finish it in 20 seconds, but he's that good. You go watch him compete in wrestling and grappling. He's finished guys that are good, better than he is. You look at the wrestling mat, especially, guys. He used to just go out there and pin slay people in the first period. Not a very common occurrence. So what you see from Bo Nickal is he has finishing instincts inside of MMA, outside of MMA. But has he done it against anybody that matters in wrestling? The answer is obviously yes. In mixed martial arts, the answer is obviously no. Best win of his career is Jamie Pickett. Need I say more? So actually, I would argue the best win of his career might be Donovan Beard, but that's a story for a different day. Shout out to him. He just retired from professional competition.
A lot of times, Liam, it comes also with that step up in competition like we talked about, where these guys are just finish. And that first time they fight a real motherfucker, it's like, oh, that didn't come as quickly. That didn't come as easily. They might still find it, but it takes longer.
And you never know how people will respond to adversity. I'm just pretty sure, as sure as you can be in a cage fight, that Bo Nickal is not going to provide that adversity. Yeah, or not Bo Nickal, sorry. Cody Brundage is not going to provide that adversity.
I don't know, man. Did you ask Adolfo how his chin felt after taking that shot in 1-on-1?
The stats I will say are so interesting about Cody because he definitely has power and power can trend towards not landing as many strikes, but it's also this guy's never landed more than 30 strikes in a fight. He's been the fucking distance in the UFC. So it's Cody Brundage is the weirdest guy to handicap anyway if he's not fighting Bo Nickal because most of the time he's got a floor of being a plus 1,000 and he's got, a ceiling of being all right. So it's to quote John terms, it's my man could go out there and put on a fight, beat anybody. Trayshawn Gore, I didn't see that coming. I'll just tell you the truth. But it's I'd never bet on Cody Brundage against anybody. So
even the Zach Reese fight, I bet him. I bet 2 years. I bet him against Reese, and I was telling people, I'm this is ridiculous. Cody Brundage should own this guy. He's a clown, and he takes him down 20 seconds in, and I'm I knew it. He's gonna maul him. suddenly he's in a triangle, and I'm like, fortunately he slammed him, but I'm like, how this guy doesn't have jiu-jitsu? Like, what is going on right now? You know, he finds a way to disaster.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because the last thing I'll mention on this fight is the fact that you had a guy in Bo Nickal who has gone out there. He's pulled triangles. He's done this kind of thing. The reason I lean towards the KO in this spot is because, number one, we've seen many times Brundage finish with strikes on the ground. We saw Malkoun basically fumble the bag with those ground strikes. But Bo Nickal, you know, is he going to guard pull a triangle against the guy who just slam KO'd somebody out of a triangle? Like, probably not. Like, he's probably just going to try and stay in the top position, and I think that would be wise. So for me, lean is Bo Nickal, but I'm not breaking news there, and I just don't think that you can get to a minus 2,500 money line on anybody in mixed martial arts. So shout out to Bo, rooting for him. We're wrestlers at heart over here, but we also got to acknowledge, I mean, you know, it's the cage fight at the end of the day. There's inherent variance, and you don't want to get caught with your pants down on a minus 2,500. So good luck to our guy Clint. He's got the big plus money number. You know, we're always rooting for those, but I also think it's a uphill battle. So let's see how it shakes out, and hopefully either Brundage round 1 or Nickal round 2 for our boys. But next up, we've got the talk of the town, Charles Oliveira, the biggest star on the card. He's in the 4th position here, taking on Arman Tsarukyan, and Arman Tsarukyan is a guy I've really loved and respected all the way on up. You know, I had the displeasure, unfortunately, of having to make the case for Arman with Magic and Andrew. And I know that Magic is like friends with Joel Alvarez, and like Joel Alvarez is the fucking coolest dude. I like Joel Alvarez. He's got great skills. Dude, I'm sitting there like trying to be polite and cordial and professional with a lot of fucking money on Arman Tsarukyan to win that fight. And I was just like, fuck, like of all the weeks that go on, this is the week. But in any case, we had that talk, we had that conversation, and I ended up being right about that one. Arman absolutely whooped his ass. He was minus 200 in that fight. He's minus 200 again here. And this time it's not an unproven guy, with all due respect, in Joel Alvarez. It's not a guy, you know, who is very skilled and talented, but like, you know, maybe still putting it all together and has a lot still to prove. It's a former UFC champion. It's a guy who's the most decorated finisher in the history of the promotion. And above all those things, he's really good in every phase of fighting. Like, where does Charles suck? Is he a bad wrestler? I mean, he's out-wrestled some good guys before. Is he a terrible grappler? No, he's one of the most prolific submission hunters in the history of the UFC. Is he a bad striker? No, he's knocking out your favorite knockout artist and dropping a lot of guys along the way. So it's like, he just checks a lot of boxes for me as a guy I like to get behind. Talking about violent guys that can go out there and win a fight at any moment. Charles Oliveira, 7-4 as an underdog in this promotion. He's done an excellent job. When you say we're doubting you, we're counting you out, we don't think you can win, more often than not, he comes up aces. And when he did it, it's against the best guys in the sport, the best guys in the division. It was at 145 when he was cutting way too much weight, a la Renato Moicano and these guys. Like, sometimes you have to find your better weight class. Jared Cannonier got knocked out by Sean Jordan. Does he suck at fighting? No, he's in the wrong weight class. He found a new weight class. He's much more successful. So I think of this fight and I say to myself, man, you got a guy here in Charles Oliveira who has a ton of motivation to get back to where he was at, but maybe the oncoming force is too much. Maybe Arman Tsarukyan, with the power, with the wrestling, with the takedowns, he can get one over on him. But I've been high on Arman the whole time, but not thinking like he's the second coming. Like, he's a great fighter. That's it. That's where it starts and ends, right? If you go out there, you have a great fight where you probably won 3 rounds to 2 against Garbrandt. That's great. But you slowed down at the end, and the third round was getting dicey, and you didn't really put a stamp on it. You left it in the balance. That was minus 300 against Garbrandt, who's way less dangerous, if we're being fair. Close fight, right? Came down to the wire. The thing that sold me on Charles here is Neto BJJ. What is Neto BJJ? I think a smaller version of Charles Oliveira. He throws hard. He's got big power shots. He can get dropped himself. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's willing to go up there with bigger guys. He choked Neil Magny in 90 seconds in a grappling match. Like, this guy has real jiu-jitsu, but also he can get clipped on the chin. He can get hurt. He was a plus 600 underdog, plus 650 underdog. He had this guy on ice skates. And then he got taken down because Arman can really wrestle. And I said after that fight, you are a minus 1,000 favorite. If you can get rocked out of your shoes and still win by taking the guy down and getting on top and holding him down, recovering, can you do those things against Charles Oliveira? Can you take those risks? Can you be in those situations? And the thing he's getting the most credit for is knocking out Beneil Dariush, which Charles had just done for him. He brought him to that position. He said, hey, you want damaged goods? Here's Beneil. And I don't mean to be rude to Beneil, but Beneil looked like a shell of himself in that fight. He came back way too quick. And also, Arman got the win, but no more impressively than Charles. They both did a great job. Like, one guy ended up on the ground. I guess that's what you could say. Beneil Dariush trying to punch a hole through the floor. I don't know what he was thinking there, but you look at those kind of situations and I just say, like, both these guys are elite lightweights in my view. Arman, obviously a younger guy on the come up, on the rise. But if he was to get stopped here, He could easily be rebuilt. He's a guy that's got a lot of potential and momentum. How many guys at 155 have we seen turned away at the door by this older generation? It's been a few now. Okay, Rafael Fiziev, great fighter, got turned away at the door. No, thank you. Justin Gaethje keeping that spot at the top. Benoit Saint-Denis tried to take that door down. Hey, come on, give it to me. I'm a young guy. I'm hungry. I want the spot. Get the fuck out of here. Sit down, says Dustin Poirier. You look at these guys at the top. I always said there's going to be turnover. It just hasn't happened yet. And if it happens here, hats off. You know, it's like Arman Tsarukyan's a great fighter. But for me, you got a fucking prolific finisher, one of the most dangerous guys in the history of the organization. They're hanging a plus 190 price tag by his name. It's hard for me to say I'm going to be on the other side. It's either a dog or pass situation for me in that spot. And I think Arman, if he goes out there and lives up to the hype, hats off to him. I think the ends by KO is interesting. You know, for that reason, like, hey, if these guys are going to exchange it on the feet, I think both guys could do it. I think both guys could win by knockout. I think both guys could hurt each other. But I think the guy who's more likely to win by submission when both guys are fresh is Charles Oliveira. That's just the way I feel about it. Maybe I'm dead wrong. I could be. But I feel like Arman is a very good control grappler with good upside in his elbows, his top positioning. You know, he could submit good guys if they're already beaten to a pulp. But that's what I think he'd need to do to submit Charles. Beat him to a pulp, get him really tired. And I think in the early going, this is a very honest fight. Charles is conditioned to the under, right? My man goes out there and finds a way to get a fight done quick. And I think that that's what's going to happen here. I think somebody's going to get finished. And again, plus 190 for the guy who's the most proven finisher in the history of the company at UFC 300. How wrong could you be? Let me find out. Clint, what do you got here, brother?
I mean, you make a very compelling argument, Liam. You really do. It's hard to go wrong with Charles Oliveira. It's hard to go wrong with the unders. Absolutely. I can't argue with any of that whatsoever. This is a changing of the guard spot, in my opinion, man. I mean, Oliveira has been there. He's done it. He's come back. He's gone again. And I've been zigging when everyone else is zagging. And it's worked out really, really well, man. Like, everyone was ready to call this guy dead against Beneil Dariush, a guy who he's big, he's slow, he's plotting, he's a little bit chinny himself. He's got power, but everyone was just piling in the boat to fade Charles Oliveira with Beneil Dariush. He was done after he lost to Makhachev, man. Done, dead. Takes him out in the first round. And I felt very smart that night. Not something that happens very often. I felt very smart that night, betting on Charles Oliveira. And he comes out and finishes this dude in the first round. And you might be right that he was kind of damaged goods at that point. Arman picked up the pieces and did what he needed to do. But we've got this 27-year-old absolute stud kid who's built like a freaking fire hydrant, whose UFC debut was against the current champion, which sets up a gorgeous storyline for when this guy finally makes it to a title shot. He lost a questionable decision against Mateus Gamrot, a fight that I felt was very difficult to score, one that you could have kind of like justified a 30-27 either side, because lots of scrambles, lots of grappling. What are we watching? What are we doing? But this guy is capable of knocking out anybody on the feet or on the ground. If he gets control positions, his elbows, his ground and pound, it's nasty. And that's been Charles Oliveira's kind of big weak point, is the KOs. He's been knocked out 4 different times over the course of his career. And even though he came back with that absolutely stellar knockout after losing to Islam Makhachev, I'm still not ready to look at this and just be like, oh, he's back. He's back. He's fine. He's totally good. He's a killer be killed fighter, man. He's one of these shoot the box guys. He's 34 years old, a guy that had a questionable chin to begin with. And now he's fighting a guy who is probably physically stronger than him, a guy that when he explodes, when Arman goes, he's probably faster. I mean, like, strike for strike, Charles is probably a little bit quicker, but like when Arman explodes with that overhand right, he's going to probably close to the target at a decent rate a little bit faster there. I think Arman's going to knock him out, man. I think this is a spot where Arman finally gets a chance to challenge for a title and say, hey, this is my moment. This is my spot. And he's being given a guy I think he can beat. You know, you go back to like the, what was the fight that haunts me to this day? Was my guy, Kevin Lee, when he was just mauling Charles Oliveira with the wrestling and then completely death gassed in round 3. A great way to start COVID, by the way. When I have a big bet on Kevin Lee, my guy, the guy I've been saying could challenge for a title for years and years when everyone's telling me I'm a freaking idiot, and he's this close to doing it, and then he leaves his neck out on a takedown when it was working perfectly. I think Arman can out-wrestle Charles. Charles is willing to play jiu-jitsu off of his back. I think Arman can strike with Charles on the feet so much as he can stay safe and then explode and hit those big power shots. And I think Charles Oliveira is willing to engage in either one of those types of fights, which is going to put him at risk. So more often than not, I think this is Arman's moment, man. I'm not discounting Charles Oliveira. I'm not saying he can't win this fight. Obviously, he's the GOAT. He can do anything he wants. He can win by knockout. He can win by sub. Somehow he could drive this thing late and win a decision. Absolutely not discounting that. I just think it's Arman's time, man. I think he's got enough advantages. I think he's got enough tools, and I think it's a decent stylistic matchup for him as well.
Yeah, I think that's all fair play. I mean, like, it could operate like the Alvarez fight where he gets to the top position, he beats him up, and then Olives has no answers. But for me, I do think I expect more resistance here from a guy who's a little more proven at the UFC level. But it's also to say, like, Arman is a fucking great fighter. And if you don't see that, you pick a different sport. I mean, he's obviously very good at what he does. But I also think he's got a little bit of that ego right now. He feels like I could go out there and beat these guys up on the feet. And I just think that we've kind of seen that with Charles before. Like, guys came out like, I am going to knock this guy the fuck out. And like 2 minutes into the fight, you could see the look on their face change. And they're like, fuck, this isn't going to end well. Justin Gaethje had that same come to Jesus meeting that Dustin Poirier had, which is like, after you start fighting this guy and he's landing knees to the body and you're out there for a while, you're like, fuck this guy, man. I hate being out here with this guy. And that's what I think is Arman, if he wins this early, is going to look clean, to be calling for the title shot, and everybody's going to agree with him. But the later this fight goes, or if Charles is able to sting him in the early going, I think it's going to be a much more greasy fight. I think that Charles is a little bit more live than people give him credit for. But also, he does seem like a popular public dog. I bet him very early in the cycle because I don't like to let the noise get to me. I like to just feel my process and go. Oftentimes, dogs, you get the best price late. Not the case on public dogs like Charles Oliveira, who I do think is going to take some public money this week. But I also think we've seen examples in the past, the public side, the guy who's getting a lot of betting activity. Dustin Poirier knocks out Benoit Saint-Denis. Sean O'Malley, right? Very popular public betting underdog against Aljamain Sterling. Didn't matter. They had a lot of parlay liability on Aljo. They're more than happy to give you the plus 200 there. And I just feel like in this spot, you've got a guy in Charles Oliveira, plus 190, plus 180, biggest star on the card. Yeah, maybe they're trying to pass the torch, but maybe he's not ready to give it up yet. That's the thing for me that's keeping this matchup super compelling. John, how do you feel about it? Great fight in the lightweight division.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck's the man. I kind of feel like it's an IQ test to a degree for Arman. And I know maybe you don't agree, Liam, but like, I think Arman on top. I don't think Arman has very good offensive jiu-jitsu, but I feel like he flows very, very well on top. Like, I think Davi Ramos, if I'm not mistaken, won an ADCC gold medal. Joe Alvarez, obviously very aggressive guard. He just stays very, very calm on top. I really would be very surprised if he got subbed by Chuck on bottom. With that said, though, I have some concerns to your point about Arman's head. I have some concerns he's going to come out here and strike with him because I know people see – I honestly think half the time Chuck gets rocked. It's like, I got stung a bit. I'm going to drop to my back because anybody that wants to fuck around with me down here, that's fine. Like, I legitimately think that's half the knockdowns that have happened to him in the last couple of years. Oliveira on the feet is a problem. Everybody talks about the jiu-jitsu, the record for subs in the UFC. The most dangerous aspect of his game at the high level, and by high level I mean the top 10, like most guys who are going to grapple you in the top 10, you're not going to guard sub. It's just not that's how it goes. But like, I bet him big against Benny. I think I had 4 units on him at like plus 120 because everybody's like, oh, Benny's not going to get guard sub. I was like, yeah, but like, Benny's never fought someone that throws with the kind of heat and punishment that Charles throws with, like everybody talks about his grappling. No one talks about the fact that the guy's gigantic. He's very fast and hits very, very hard. And in the last 5 years, hasn't been afraid to bite down and like go into the fire. Like the Gaethje fight, he subbed him, but before he subbed him, he put him on his ass, like it was not I took him down and subbed him. It was I basically finished him on the feet and then subbed him. It's like, that's my concern here. Because like on paper, I'm like, I think minus 210 on Arman might not be bad. Because like, I do think he can take Chuck down like when he wants to, more or less. And I think he can pretty much stay safe. But if he like fucks around striking with him, I mean, he's 5'7". Like Arman, and I'll say it for Rich because he's not here right now. I think Arman's on steroids. Like the guy is like, the dude is built like,
brother.
Yeah. He's like,
he's on steroids.
He's built different, but if he stays on the feet with Charles, he might knock him out, but he's 5'7", Charles is 5'11". He throws all those nasty knees and elbows in tight. I would not feel good about Tsarukyan at all if he is like hanging out in the feet with Charles. why I lean the Arman side is I think if he takes him down, like kind of to Clint's point, the Kevin Lee fight, you go back to that. The first two, prior to him subbing him, the first 2 rounds of that, though, he's just going for leg entanglements. And I feel like if he tries to entangle Arman's legs, it's just going to end up with Arman in like top half or in mount, just like smashing him. But yeah, I mean, Charles is awesome. And I also think underrated is that Charles' defensive wrestling has improved dramatically. If you watch the Islam fight, Islam eventually subbed him. And in the first round, the last minute and a half or so, got the top and kind of like was pounding on him a bit. But prior to that, he got to the clinch. And like I max bet Islam in that fight. And I'm thinking the first time they clinch up, he's going to get tripped and end up on his ass. And that's probably going to be GG right there. Charles was like holding his own in there, with like getting over-unders with him and like kind of moving Islam around, which nobody really does to Islam. I was pretty impressed with it. So like, I mean, it's obviously not a layup. It's Charles Oliveira. I feel like Arman is on a trajectory to eventually be champion. Like I know all the other big names in the division, Benoit, all those guys. I feel like Arman is going to be champion one day. Like I could not be more bullish on his career trajectory. If this price was like minus 170, I'd probably bet him here. But it is a different kind of test because Chuck is dangerous everywhere. And like when you're standing with him, like Arman's going to punch him in the face a lot on the feet. The thing is, he's not going to punch. This is not Mateusz Gamrot who he's going to punch him back off. If he wants to step into range and hit him, he's going to get hit back and get hit back hard. And like, again, to your point, Liam, like, he seems like very, very cocky and like very confident in striking, especially knocking out Benny. Charles is very, very different from a physicality standpoint than Benny is. I don't know. I have weird feels about it because like my entire analytical point of my brain is like Arman's got every tool here to put him on the mat, hold him there, and just do what he wants to him. But there's also a part of my brain that's like, can you really ever get to minus 200 against Charles Oliveira? The guy's dangerous everywhere. Like on the feet, he's a killer. On the ground, he's a killer. Like those are not the kind of guys you want to be fading, like guys who can finish in every position, especially at chalk money. So I don't know. I lean the Arman side, but I mean, I think Chuck's live everywhere, even though I really do think Arman can stay safe if he gets on top of him.
You guys ready for this one? I dumped a bet online account of over $1,000 on Islam Makhachev minus 185 against Charles Oliveira. We're talking about fading Islam in the desert. No, thank you. I'm not doing that. It's a personal approach. But when you look at that fight, like, yeah, Islam goes out there. He delivers at minus 185. He's a great fighter. But again, who won that fight when they contested? Islam did. He out-wrestled Arman. He beat him in those fights. And listen, if they ran it back today, maybe it changes. Like, Arman is that good.
We don't know.
He's on a championship trajectory. But now he's got to fucking beat a champion to prove it. It's like that's where the rubber kind of meets the road, right? It's like for Charles,
100%.
I know that he's had a weird run, but again, you just look at like sample size at 155 pounds. Who's done better work? I'd say it's arguably, Charles. Like just
I bet Dustin big against him, like big against Charles, and I'm like, this guy is going to melt. Like after the first couple left hands he eats, and Charles, like, hanging in there, getting dropped twice and coming back and breaking him was, like, it was, like, insane because I was, like, I'm living in a fever dream right now. Like, I'm on mushrooms or something, like, But also, it was one of the most impressive things I've seen in the cage from a career trajectory standpoint, like Charles going from being the quitter he was 8 years ago to today.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think the Charles quitter narrative is definitely real. I think he has quit in the past. I think he quit against Islam. But I also think that when you look at the circumstances of that fight, it's like he's flown over there to lose. They wanted him to lose. It was obvious they wanted him to lose, and he lost. And it's like in this fight, I don't know that it's as clear cut as everybody's making it out to be because a lot of people are like, they want to do this rematch. I'll tell you the truth, guys. Within the MMA bubble, big rematch. Who the fuck knows Arman Tsarukyan in your circle, right? You go ask 10 people that they don't know him. So maybe that's what this is about. Big show, big event, get him the win over Charles, maybe. But on the other side of things, it's a lifetime achievement award if you're Doe Bronx. You've been here, you've done it. If you get one more big win, it's back to the title shots. It's back to the big opportunities. He knows what that's like. So maybe it's too much, right? Like maybe it's just he's already had it. He's already achieved the top. Thanks anyways. Thanks for the memories. Great time at 300. I just don't see Charles as that guy. I see Charles as a guy who wants to go out there, scrap, put it on the line, be competitive. And if he can win this fight, I think he's going to. If he can't, My hat's off to Arman Tsarukyan, a guy who's going to fight for the title, a guy who's going to be a real contender in this division. But I bet Demiris Magulov before I knew that Demiris Magulov was ready to retire, was on his way out of the UFC, was having health conditions. You know, that's the kind of fight where, okay, all those things are present. You're not finishing Demiris Magulov. You're not finishing Matt Frivola, who's supposed to have this glass chin that everybody wants to talk about and whatever. You're not finishing that guy. It's like you start to go through the list. He beat fucking Christos Giagos, where we're gonna take a fucking baked cookies for him. It's like, yeah, a bunch of guys have finished Christos Giagos. A bunch of guys have finished Beneil Dariush. Alexander fucking Hernandez finished Beneil Dariush. All right, so it's like you want to just get into the granularity here. Who's finished the better quality opposition? It's not fucking close. It's not fucking close. So
I don't disagree. It's
my process. It becomes. Oh no, I'm just saying. Like I have to defend this position because it is against my grain. Like playing a public underdog, not something you normally see from me. Being on the public side, but it's just one of these spots where I've seen it happen at these UFC pay-per-views. They pay the public dog because they're a huge star and because they're fucking dangerous at every position. And that's kind of how I feel about Charles. But could go either way. I fucking respect Arman. I've been there for 5 units at minus 200 before, so I get the impulse. But I just think this is a different ballgame. So great fight. Agree. Phenomenal. Let's move to this bad motherfucker fight. BMF, baby. We've got Justin Gaethje, the highlight, taking on Max Blessed Holloway. This is the talk of the town. This is the people's main event. I will start with my brother Clint. How do you feel about this one? Do you got any betting action? What's the thoughts here?
Oh man, I love this fight so much. And I almost didn't have betting action because guys, if there was, we talked about like 1 or 2 fights earlier in the card. We're like, there's better spots. Like it's a decent fight. You could bet every single fight on this card. Obviously, most of us degenerates are going to, because that's what we do. But like, if there's one fight that you could just be like, you know what? I'm going to pass because I want to watch. I'm going to pass because it's fucking awesome. That's this fight right here. You don't need a bet for this fight, guys. You don't have to have a bet for this fight, guys, because this fight fucking rocks. Like that's exactly what this fight is. This is one that I was kind of torn on, man. When I first looked at this, when they first booked it, I'm like, oh, poor Max is getting his ass beat. They're moving this guy back up to 155, and they're just going to parade him around like they did with DP. And it's over. Obviously, I'm betting Gaethje. And then time passes. And then I dig into the tape, and then I watch it back, and I run these things, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. I'm betting Max Holloway, guys. So I've got a bet here on Max Holloway this weekend, and I was not expecting to say those words. Gaethje, 35 years old. Obviously turned that corner, fighting some of the best of his life since he decided to move out there with Trevor Whitman and get serious and wants to have a belt and yada, yada, all that good stuff, right? But at the end of the day, he's a guy who thrives in controlled chaos, right? A Brandon Royval type of guy these days. And even though he's reined it in just a little bit, still not always, right? Like he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Like he went life and death with Charles Oliveira. That did not turn out too well for him. Like guys can still get to Justin Gaethje. He's not getting any younger. He's getting older, and he's still got all those wear and tear fight miles on him. He's still willing to get in there and just crack it out with anybody who wants to. And I think that's going to be kind of his undoing here. Max, on the other hand, he's kind of capped his ceiling at 145, right? Like this guy couldn't go anywhere because the current
champion all-time great. Not a bad ceiling, right?
No, exactly, right? Like he wasn't going to get one more fight with the guy. So instead of going, I'm just keep beating my head against this brick wall, I'm going to do it the right way this time. I'm going to move up to 155 again, except this time I'm going to put some muscle on. This time I'm going to train for it. It's not going to be a short notice. Hey, we need a guy to fight DP. Sure, I'll do it. Like this guy got ready for a fight at 155 this time around. And I actually think that makes a pretty decent sized difference, man. Like now he knows what it feels like. Now he's moving up with a purpose. Now he's going up there to get a win. And I think that factors in this fight a whole hell of a lot. Even though Max is moving up a weight class, I think he's still the longer guy in this matchup. I need to go double check my numbers here, but I believe he's going to still be
even. I think it's about even on size.
Okay, about even. But maybe still, though, you know what I mean? Like
one way or the other.
He's not going to be at a huge reach disadvantage or anything like that, moving up a weight class, which is crazy. And then you look at the guys that are having success with Justin, man. The biggest example that I think is so perfect, run back the Oliveira fight. Now, obviously, Oliveira and Holloway do not strike the exact same way, right? Like Max is more of a boxer guy. Oliveira is a Muay Thai guy. It's not the same, but they both have that long, skinny, fast, quick type of build. And Oliveira was tagging up Justin Gaethje in that fight. He did him. He didn't go in there and take him down. I'm sorry, he did submit him, but he didn't go in there, like he didn't grapple him, he didn't wrestle him, he didn't double leg him and take him down. Like he beat the shit out of him on the feet. He dropped him. So you've got Charles Oliveira, who is piecing this guy up at range, and Justin Gaethje can't close the distance to use the leg kicks. You think the leg kicks on the chicken legs, that's going to be the story, right? Well, Justin can't get there. He can't get in around those long, straight pipes, 1-2 right down the pipe type of strikes. And Max has a lot of that. Max is an incredible boxer. He's got great footwork speed, good head movement. And when you run back the DP fight, my brain told me it was a one-sided beatdown. Watching it back, I'm like, Max was very much in that fight, and he came alive in the late rounds like he always does. So does he have to get over the hump of early round Justin Gaethje? Yeah, he absolutely does. But he's also a guy who's going to hit harder up at 155 pounds, theoretically, carrying some additional muscle mass on him. He's going to be the slicker boxer of the two. He's the more elusive of the two. One wants to car crash, the other wants to duck and move and hit corners. So I think there's a lot of ways that Max Holloway wins the striking battle on the feet here. On top of that, he's been working his grappling, guys. And what have we seen from Justin Gaethje recently? Guys that take him down and tap him out, that's a freaking problem for him. He gets overcommitted on these punches. He will knock himself to the ground swinging for the fences. And I think that's an issue here. Max Holloway could easily dodge a strike, dump him, take the back, and get this thing into a grappling realm. Hell, he almost won his last couple of fights by submission, which is weird because nobody's ever seen Max Holloway go for chokes, and all of a sudden he's going for chokes. Like, I think Max Holloway is very actively working on his grappling instead of using his face as a catcher's mitt to take damage. So lots of different factors involved here. But I think actually Max Holloway at plus money is the side. I wish I had taken it earlier when he was way up in like the plus 200 range. But I think any plus money is good money in a fight between two bad motherfuckers like this that are just going to throw down and go at it. Could he get his legs chopped off early in the fight? Yeah, absolutely. He could. That could happen. Could Justin Gaethje be the first guy to finish Max Holloway with strikes? He could, but I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not betting that. Like, everybody who's ever said they're going to knock out Max Holloway so far has been wrong. So I'm not going to bank on the fact that one guy suddenly will be the one to do it. I think Max is just going to outlast Justin here. He's by far the more durable of the two. And as this fight gets extended, I think he takes over. And guys, I got nuts. I sprinkled the round 3, round 4, and round 5 submission props because if it looks anything like the Charles Oliveira fight, I could see Max tying up some kind of a choke, whether Justin decides to wrestle, whether he shoots for an ankle or something like that, or if he, gets jumped on when Max Holloway floors him the same way Oliveira did. I just think the sub is theoretically live in this spot, and it's 80-1, 100-1, and like 120-1 for the rounds 3, 4, and 5. I don't think it's coming early just because that's not Max's style. Max is more of a late round type of guy. So I think this fight's going to go into the deeper rounds. I think it'll be a 3rd round or a 4th round type of finish. But I like Max Holloway here.
Clint, I think you hit on a lot of great points. And there's some questions from the chat that I'll address on the back end here. But let's hear what John has to say about this matchup. Great fight, BMF title on the line, another 5-rounder. And I don't know that people have fully grasped that. But yeah, 5 rounds in the lightweight division, going down in the featured bout of the evening. How do you feel about this one?
Well, I feel like we're really watering down the BMF title at this point, having people defend it for one. And I'm not one of those. Like, I'm all for fun things, but like, unnecessary. We could do 5 rounds just engaging Max Holloway without a BMF title on the line. But from the fight perspective, the funny thing is when I first saw the line, it was like Max like plus 185, 190, something like that. I was like, I'm max betting Max Holloway, like easily. Like this is an easy bet. And then I taped it, and I came away kind of leaning on the Justin side. Like I haven't bet him.
We did the exact opposite.
I haven't bet. If he comes down to like minus 125, I'll take a small poke at him. I guess my view is, I mean, we all know Max has better cardio than he does. And like, I think Max's finishing equity is being underrated a little bit. But I also think just like Max being the cardio demon that he is probably coloring the market. Like Gaethje doesn't have bad cardio. Like he went more or less 5 with Tony Ferguson. He was in a brutal fight on the way on track there with Dustin Poirier the first time before he got KO'd. And that was kind of before he evolved to stop being like, you can punch me in the face 3 times for every leg kick I land. I think it's an interesting fight because like I do think Max is the more technical fighter, obviously, but like durability and hardware matters so much. And Max for his career has been a durability bully to an extent. Like I love Max. I've made a lot of money on him in his career. But Max is not afraid to eat a shot to land 3. And like, you saw that he got punished bad for that the first time he fought Dustin Poirier. I think Gaethje hits harder than Poirier. Now, I'm not saying he's going to do the same thing because he's a different fighter, obviously. Like, Gaethje doesn't throw in combination nearly as often as Poirier does. I don't think he can kind of have the same match him strike for strike on a volume standpoint in the way Poirier did. But the leg kicks are a big deal to me. Like, they're a huge deal to me. Like, maybe he doesn't throw them here or he can't get to them. And if that's the case, he's probably screwed. But like I mentioned earlier in the show, leg kicks these days, if you can get off on them effectively, they're basically an I win button. And we've seen Max struggle with them considerably in the past. And one of the more interesting things, like taping Max, I've found is like, people are like, oh, he dealt with him badly in the first Volkanovski fight, but not so much in the last two. But Volkanovski basically stopped throwing the outside calf kick in the last two. The first one he threw, it was all he threw. The second two, all he threw was like kind of the inside leg kick, which is not nearly as punishing. All Gaethje throws is to the outside. And so, like, I think he can compromise him with calf kicks here. I think on a minute-to-minute basis, I think it's going to be close. Like, on volume, I would edge Max on volume, but, like, the power difference is just, like, it's massive here. It is really, really massive here. I have at different points thought Gaethje was maybe fading, and then, like, the guy outperforms his tape consistently. It's funny because before he fought Fiziev, I was like, I shouldn't even tape this. I should click Gaethje plus 185. It's definitely a good bet. And then I taped it. I'm like, Fiziev's too fast. He's going to hurt him, whatever. And then sure enough, it played out the way that I thought it would before I taped the fight. And I guess what I'm getting to is, and by the way, to be clear, Clint's late pokes on sub, I don't think are crazy, because I do think if you get on top of Gaethje, like, the guy has negative jiu-jitsu, like, he is subbable, but I just keep thinking it's going to be a high volume fight, and I think Gaethje's a much heavier hitter, and the leg kick equity is gigantic here. So it's like, can I get to Max being like pick him? Like, not really, because it's such a big deal in how fights are scored these days. Like, volume matters a lot if like power is commensurate. But when it's not commensurate, like, if you land 3 to 4 huge strikes in a round, judges, especially the last like 16 months or so, they remember that more. If you have a guy who's limping on a leg or switching stances, or if Max has to fight southpaw for a protracted period, yeah, Max can fight southpaw, but he's going to get hit in the face a lot more when he's fighting southpaw. I just think Max is a better fighter than Justin Gaethje, but I think Justin Gaethje's physical intangibles combined with the leg kicks give him like a slight edge in this fight. So like, I lean to the Gaethje side. Like I said, I'm not betting minus 150. If he got to 125, I might poke it small, but I lean Gaethje here.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do think that when you look at a guy like Gaethje, he's a dangerous fighter. It's a tough fight for Max, but I just have always believed in Max's skill. Like, I think he's a very good fighter. I actually bet Yair Rodriguez plus 500, right? When you start getting to like crazy numbers in elite fights,
that was a great bet, honestly.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It was like turn him into a wrestler. But when you look at that fight, it's like Yair Rodriguez, one of the hardest guys to game plan for in the UFC. Like, unless you could just go out there and power wrestle him from this first jump, it's like, that guy's going to maybe kill you in the first round or a couple rounds. He's going to land some big shots. I thought he landed a couple shots on Volk, but he was too tentative because of the takedowns. I thought that he absolutely blasted most of his opponents. Brian Ortega, I had a big bet on Ortega. He blasted him there too. So it's just like, you see, Yair can take out anybody, but there's ways to get to him, right? We've seen that in the past. And Max is so smart that he did that. Like, he didn't go ego. He wasn't like, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to stand in the pocket till I get knocked out. He was like, okay, this kid hits hard. He wants to bang here. Fuck that. I'm going to take him down. Against Korean Zombie. Korean Zombie is a legendary grappler. He's a very good black belt. People don't talk about him like this because they've only watched MMA for a few years, and I respect that. But I'll just tell you, Korean Zombie is a fucking legit grappler, okay? Period, point blank, no two ways about it. Max almost submitted him, and nobody talks about that. But he put him in a really deep Darce choke, and he almost finished it. What is his bread and butter? What is his specialty on the ground? It is front headlocks. He has done it with the guillotine. He has put people in danger with the Darce choke. In round 4 against Poirier, in a fight he lost, in a classic fight, in a back and forth that he took on 5 weeks' notice, he put him in a Darce choke to end the 4th round. And Poirier just looked up at him after, like, respect. Like, this guy, fucking, I just beat the piss out of this guy. He's still trying to choke me in the 4th round. And then the way that they look at each other, Max is like, he's like pointing to him, and Max just goes like, starts calling up the crowd, whatever. In round 5, a fight, he's getting his ass whooped. It's like, this guy, Max Holloway, is built differently. He's had 1 million UFC fights. He's never been dropped. So the idea that he could get knocked out by Gaethje is absolutely true. Absolutely. But it's not in evidence, right? We've seen big hitters hit him in the head, neck, and chest. Dustin Poirier, you could say you think Gaethje hits harder. Okay, maybe he does hit harder. Does he hit harder by fucking 50%? It's like, no, it's a difference in degree, not in kind. They both hit fucking hard. They're both lightweights. They both knock people the hell out. He was able to go through that. That was a couple years ago. Hey, maybe everything's gone. It's all compromised now. But it's like this time he's better prepared. He's had a longer training camp against a guy who I think is more suspect on the ground, right? Like you have a guy who's definitely suspect on the ground in Dustin Poirier, who's been exploited before. Benoit Saint Denis, his best moments of the fight, taking him down, taking his back, putting him in danger with the rear naked choke series. But when you look at this guy, Max Holloway, he's got excellent chokes. He's got a great front headlock series, and he's very difficult to wrestle and take down. So if anybody's going to have wrestling or grappling upside, I think the guy who's more likely to pursue it, I think the guy who's more likely to get it is Max Holloway. On the other side of things, you got the striking dynamic. I think they're both going to land a ton of shots here. So the question is, who is more durable? And somebody had said before, these guys are both durable. I mean, that's a fact. Like you're looking at two guys that can go out there and put themselves through hell. But one guy is better at it. And how do I say that? Why do I say that? Because he's never been finished by strikes. It's never happened. So for Max Holloway on the one side, he's been finished one time in his career via submission early in his career against a guy who outranked him in jiu-jitsu, against a guy who was physically more along in his prime. And by the way, that was at 145. Dustin Poirier back when he was cutting all the damn weight. Okay, got him there. Great fight, learning lesson for the young man. That's the only time he's ever been finished. He's been out there with world champions, the best guys to ever do it. Over and over, 145, 155, didn't matter. Said he'd step up on short notice to fight Khabib. Didn't give a fuck. So this guy, Max Holloway, for me, doesn't care who he's fighting. He's willing to go out there and compete with anybody. And against the best guys, the best tacticians, the guys who can go out there and fight 5 hard rounds perfectly, tactically smart the whole time, like a Volk. I took Volk. I lead the chalk. I'm not a guy who's like all over Max. When everybody was saying Max at plus 170 is the bet of the year against Volkanovski, I was like, guys, this is the third time they're seeing each other. Volk is better at the things that they do. We've seen that kind of play out. I thought that Max's chance to win was the second fight. He landed the big shots. He knocked him down. He rocked him. By the way, Volk, who's a difficult guy to hurt and put away and rock, he did that. He dropped him, but Volk was able to recover, wrestle him, and that was the fight. Is Gaethje going to wrestle with Max? Like, I don't see that. Like, he wants to go out there and strike. He wants to do damage. He wants to have a banger. And he can do that with anybody. But against Eddie Alvarez, he fell apart doing it. Doing the fight that he wanted. Get in his face. Throw like crazy. Land the leg kicks. Have a crazy brawling war. And the guy outlasted him. That was what happened. Dustin Poirier, same thing. Most recent time, didn't work out, right? Dustin's a little older. Gaethje hits just as hard. He fought a little more tactically. They still exchanged heavy strikes. Big head kicks landed for Dustin Poirier. He wasn't able to take him out. Big head kick lands for Gaethje. He goes to sleep. That's all of it. But again, Dustin Poirier, has he ever been put to sleep before? The answer is yes, multiple times. And it happened against Michael Johnson back in the day. Guys you don't expect have put him out and down before. That's never happened with Max. So again, it's like there's just a lot of speculation, I feel, in this line where, yeah, if he knocks him out, it could look hindsight very obvious, but we don't have it in evidence. So the evidence says you got one guy, and this was weeks ago, I tipped out at plus 200, Max Holloway. And the reason I thought he was a good bet at plus 200 is I was like, how wrong could you be on one of the best featherweights of all time who competed in an all-time classic when he did move up to lightweight against another very, very solid fighter who's still relevant today in Dustin Poirier, competed against that guy tooth and nail, didn't have the power, outlanded him numerically on strikes. Dustin Poirier, guys, at the time was winning 5-round bangers against everybody, going to depths of hell against Dan Hooker, down, about to get finished, and then comes out and grits out the next 3 rounds and beat the absolute piss out of that guy. That's Dustin Poirier. So you just have to say, that guy's a fucking dog. Hats off to him. This guy, Max Holloway, he's a dog. And if he gets finished, hey, every dog's got their day. Maybe his time's over. But he's the younger guy. He's got more professional experience. He's one of the biggest fucking stars in the UFC, period. Give me Max Holloway. I think he's going to win this fight. And I don't think the sub takes are out of left field. I do think that's people watching the tape. Also, the lines reacted accordingly. I'm not going to give away all my plays, but plus 2,900 on the sub is what I got. Good luck finding that today. That's probably been bet off the board by now. So
plus 2,900, like just wait, round wise or just sub generally?
Max Holloway by sub, any round, any way you want to do it, plus 2,900. That's what I took.
That's fucking crazy.
This line reacted accordingly, in my view. I'm very good at sub props. I don't win them all, but I'm willing to look like a fool. And so
you're not supposed to win them all.
Nostradamus and look like a genius, but I'm willing to look like an asshole every time. And I'll do it again. I'll do it on this card. I'll do it on the next card. Because sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. But at plus 2,900 and plus 950 and plus 200, I'll live to fucking find out. Please go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, I honestly think Max is more likely to win inside the distance than Justin is. Like, I don't think Justin's gonna KO him. I'd be very surprised if he KOs him.
I think that it's possible. Like, that's the truth. It's a lightweight fight.
It's
25
possible,
minutes,
yeah.
long time. And I think that the way he would get him more often than not would be the low kicks. Like, I don't think you're going to put down Max Holloway with one big shot, but I do think, like, just making somebody incapable of walking on their leg anymore, hey, hats off to you if you could do that. But again, is Gaethje doing that very frequently? Not at the UFC level. So again, he's got a big, powerful low kick. I don't disrespect any of his skills. I bet him against Charles, but that was at plus 135, not at minus 175 for a guy who embraces risk, for a guy who's been dropped many times. He's been finished 4 times. He's never made it to a decision that he lost, right? So you talked about the Ferguson fight, but the one thing I would push back with is Ferguson offered him no resistance. After round 2, Ferguson was like fighting a fucking dead body, and I'm sorry, but he was literally beating a side of beef. It was harrowing. It was like a warehouse beatdown of a side of beef from a professional boxer. It looked like a Rocky scene. That was not fair. That was not good. It should have been stopped earlier. It was horrific. I don't think at a high pace of resistance, this guy can fight for 25 minutes. That's my honest belief. I think he's got a wrestler cardio and pace. I think that's 15 hard minutes going at an insane rate. And after that point, I think he drops off pretty substantially. So that's the way I feel about it. I know that that's become a public narrative, but these were the takes that I had early on, right away, by doing the research and by doing the tape. And if I'm wrong, I'll have to live with the result. But the market agreed with me to the point where Max Holloway is now sitting at plus 138, best available price according to our friends at Fight Numbers. Shout out to the guys at Fight Numbers. Description down below. They've got an odd screen that tells you the best available price for these guys. And I'm looking at that right now. Best available price for Max Holloway, plus 138. That's 50 cents more, 60 cents, 62 cents more than I bet it at. So it's like, that's long gone. It's long been since gone. And that's the market saying, hey, at plus 200, it was a good bet. At plus 136, fucking anybody's guess. I'm not telling you what to do, but I think at plus 200, it was a good bet, and I'm willing to make it every time based on the knowns. Let's move to the co-main event, guys. We got a great fight. We got a banger. We've got 2 women here that are really deserving of this opportunity, in my view. You know, Zhang Li, she's the champion. She's done the damn thing. She's fought everybody she's supposed to, but these 2 women have the same record in the UFC, man. 8 up, 2 down. The 2 that they lost, you can look them both and say, man, these are fair enough losses. You know, one, Yan Xiaonan, split decision to Marina Rodriguez. She was a big dog there. I thought she looked like a pick'em at worst. I thought she won the fight, honestly. So, again, close fight, super close. You give it to Marina, no problem. But, again, went out there and fought hard against a girl who's been ranked in the division a long time. The other time she lost, Carla Esparza, former champion. So it's like, okay, like you lost to a great fighter, 8-2 in the promotion, beat good girls along the way, knocked out Jessica Andrade, beat Claudia Gadelha. She has real wins. On the other side here, you got Zhang Li. She's the damn champion. She's out there dominating these women as a minus whatever favorite in her last fight. I thought she was going to cream Amanda Lemos. I thought she was going to submit her. And she didn't finish, but she did dominate every phase of the fight. So what else are you going to say but hats off to you, Zhang Li? The other thing is, though, I was there when Zhang Li lost as a favorite twice in a row. I was on it both times. I thought she was going to beat Rose. I thought she was better than Rose. You asked me today, I still think she's better than Rose. She lost the fight. You know, she got kicked in the first one, knocked out brutally. I don't know if that was a
You were at the Florida one?
I wasn't there in person, but I was there in spirit with my money getting fucking head kicked across the room. And then I had the, the similar thing where it's like, okay, minus 105, they're doing the rematch. Is this recency bias? Everybody saw Rose knock her out, but she's still slightly fit. I went back to the well and I lost again. I said, I'll never bet on a Weili Zhang fight again. Like if I trust in her, she flops. If I don't trust in her, she goes out there and smashes somebody. So I'm like, fuck this. But if I was to get involved with a side in this one, I would be on the dog just because of the public perception. 2 women that basically have the same height, reach, differential record in the UFC. Any way you want to slice it, they're the same, except one girl's better at wrestling and grappling. I would put that minus 200, minus 230. I wouldn't put it minus 500. That's the way I feel. Clint, go ahead, my brother. What do you got? How do you feel at this point?
You know, Liam, I've given you guys fake emo hair today. I have given you insane hot takes. I've cut promos. I delivered a 55-1 and a 100-1 bet sprinkles. Like, I've done it all, man. I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. Like, this is the fight that is the most confusing one on the entire board for me. Even the fights that are questionable, that are back and forth, where you could argue both sides, I still got to pick. I still have a choice. I still have one side that I like more than the other. I think this line is probably wide, but it makes sense. It's deserving because Zhang has been such a dominant force recently. She's so physical. The grappling is great. The submissions have come such a long way. She made Amanda Lemos look like a baby out there. It's fantastic. But Yan Xiaonan is someone who I have never, ever had a good read on, man. I have not been able to figure this girl out for the life of me. Getting TKO'd by Carla Esparza is a cardinal sin. You should not be allowed to do that and still compete in the UFC. She should have been cut, have her contract ripped up, send her to the PFL. You got TKO'd by Carla Esparza. End of story. But then she comes back out here and she beats the brakes off of Dern and knocks out Jessica Andrade. Didn't see either of those happening. So, like, I have no clue what to make of Yan Xiaonan. It feels like a spot where, God, I'm like blanking out, but like, it's almost an O'Malley spot, right? It's almost like Sugar Sean O'Malley, where the guy looks like a fraud and squeezes by a couple times and then knocks out the champion for the belt. Like, that's what this feels like to me. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't have a chance. Something stupid's going to happen. And my boy Dan Levy is so convinced that she's going to have gold wrapped around her waist that it scares me. There's a couple people in this industry, 2 of them are on this stream right now with me, that I listen to, that I favor, that I respect the opinions. They matter to me. Dan Levy's another one of them. And when he looks at a talent and goes, champion, I'm like, what am I missing? I don't get it. Something is obviously not computing here for me. I have no bet here. I'm probably in some way, shape, or fashion going to bet Zhang by submission because it's plus 500-600. And I think that's a stupid number considering how she's been fighting recently. And the fact that Yan could straight up be outed at this level in the game. I think that's the way it happens if it happens. So I might have a little piece of that at some point, but I'm not parlaying Zhang. I'll parlay the shit out of some of these other big old favorites and go down with the ship. I'm not parlaying Zhang. I'll take a long, little dart throw at Yan by KO because I've seen Yan Xiaonan. I've seen Yan Xiaonan knock somebody out in the first round who she wasn't supposed to, and I've seen Zhang get knocked out in the first round when she wasn't supposed to. So like I could see the fluke KO happening very clearly in my brain. I can witness that. So yeah, I think you've got Zhang sub, Yan KO. Dart sprinkles, maybe fight doesn't go the distance, 300K bonuses on the line. But man, I don't like it. I don't like anything here.
Fair enough. And the one thing I would say is you could probably get a very similar number if I had to guess on the ends by sub because nobody's expecting Yan Xiaonan to win the fight by submission, not the odds makers, not the betting public. So I think that the ends by sub will be within 25, 50 cents of that plus 500, plus 550, whatever it is on Zhang by sub. So just something to consider. Again, it's an EV point I make all the time on this show. Long term, if you can get more outs for the same bet, do it. Sacrifice the 10, 20 cents. I think long-term you make more money doing that and have less emotional volatility. John Stargarian, how do you feel about this one, brother? Live or not?
I mean, am I laying minus 510? Obviously not. I like the biggest price I've ever laid in my life. It was like minus 400 on Usman against Masvidal too. And that was, I mean, he won, but it didn't feel like it was a minus 400 price, when he up to when he won the fight. But I'll say this. I actually wanted to hear like Rich's perspective on the Yan case because I know Liam, you do as well, but like I come from a grappling background and I'm like, I watch Yan and I'm like, unless Zhang has like a brain tumor we don't know about, like this should be as easy as it gets. She is a pretty good wrestler. I think that gets obfuscated for how much she strikes. But like the last 3 fights she's been in, she's tried to wrestle pretty aggressively. I'm not sure as a pure wrestler, like if they put on like singlets, she'd be as good as Carla. But her physicality probably offsets a lot of that. And Yan on bottom, man, like the last 4 times she's been taken down in the UFC, she's basically been 10-8'd. Even going back beyond that, the last time before that was Claudia Gadelha, held her down for an entire round and then gassed out. I've seen nothing to suggest she has anything off her back. I love Carla. She's one of my most profitable fighters ever. But like Carla does not like kill people on the ground the way she killed Yan. Like that's not even her game. And she was able to just like cut through her guard so smoothly and just abuse her. So it's like, yeah, if they strike for 25, sure, it's dog or pass. Like that's a competitive fight. Zhang's fought to a fairly intelligent game plan her last 5 fights. I don't know what anybody on her team or her would see in the tape that would make her choose that route. I don't know. It's not like if Yan was 27 years old, I would be like, all right, there's a lot of equity for her to improve slowly or whatever and not be a fish down there. She's almost 35 though. She's not a young woman. or a young fighter. She's been around the block. And I've seen nothing to suggest she has anything off her back. Like, I know Zhang abused Lemos down there and didn't finish her, but Lemos at least is a black belt with like an idea of what she's doing on the ground. Every time I see Yan on bottom, even dating back to her debut, and who was it? Not Miranda Granger. It was someone like that, though. She looks clueless down there. I wish I could make a case for the dog because that's what I want to do. You know, generally speaking, I won't bet Zhang. I won't parlay her. I just feel like the path for her to cover this price is there if she takes it, and she literally took that path one fight ago. So I am not gonna like make a hot like I like to go anti-market whatever, but like honestly, there are people that I think can beat Zhang in this division. I thought Carla could beat her. Like her getting subbed the way she did was kind of odd to me. I think if she fights to the optimal strategy,
I'll speak to that, John. Don't worry.
All right. If she fights to the optimal strategy here, though, I just don't think there's many outs for Yan here. Like Joanna is like one of the best defensive grapplers in the history of the sport, male or female. And the last time they fought, she mauled her. I've never seen anybody do that to Joanna, and she had fought many, many good grapplers. I think Zhang's got her deficiencies as a defensive grappler, but Jan's not going to expose those. I'm like pretty confident. So yeah, I mean, I think Zhang should cruise. What I do like in this fight is the under 4.5. It's like minus 130 right now. My view is if Zhang does have like, for whatever reason, decides to strike with her, Zhang's a heavy hitter. Yan is a heavy hitter. They're going to exchange in the pocket and swing. And if she doesn't, and she takes the path of least resistance, she is going to get to dominant positions on the ground, and I think would likely finish her there. So, like, I am almost never a proponent for taking women's unders just because women's fights tend to be higher volatility and obviously have much lower finish rates. But I think the under is pretty good here, but I think Zhang should roll.
Fair enough. Here you have it. I'm going to explain why I think Carla Esparza fucking sold against, what's her name? Listen, when you have somebody who's a two-time champion, right? Carla Esparza wins the belt. Frankly, John, between you and me, did her and Rose fight? Because I didn't see it, right?
Dude.
Like I had 10 units on Carla there, and I
maxed her too.
I'm very happy for all the money. They didn't fight. Okay, so she got the belt for free, right? Like did nothing to get the belt. I don't know.
Got married a week later.
Which, by the way, was the handicap. I'm like, she's fighting her friend. She's getting married in a week. Is she really going to have busted up bruises all on her face? She didn't. They didn't fight. She got the belt. She won the thing. She took the pictures. Bro, I don't know if she ever stepped foot in an MMA gym again. Because what we saw against Zhang Weili was someone who didn't want to be there. From the
She let her up in the first round. She got on top and let her up.
Dude, it was literally horrific. She did not want to be there at all. And I think that Carla, that fought Yan Xiaonan, and this could sound silly in hindsight, but I truly believe this, was the most motivated Carla there ever was. Not close. She wanted a title shot. She wanted to get back to the strap. She had beaten a couple girls. It was all fucking fugazi, close, falling back for leg locks against Marina Rodriguez and all this stupid shit. But then when you look at that fight, man, Carla Esparza went out there with a mission. If I finish this girl, if I take her down, I put her in bad position, she'll have no answer. And by the way, Yan Xiaonan was training in China. She was right. She had no idea what to do. She put her in bad spots. She tried her best with whatever limited knowledge she had on the ground, and she got exposed. But now you have a girl in Zhang Weili who's been putting together these skills and been putting a well-rounded game together. But a lot of it has relied on her insane physicality. She goes out there and picks people up and throws them ass over tea kettle. Like most women can't do that. Jessica Andrade can do that. That's why she's made a career in this sport. So you look at these women, they're extremely strong. They're physical. Yan Xiaonan at the face-off today, I thought looked slightly bigger. I think that they both look very similar size. On the, the tail of the tape, everything is fucking checking the same boxes. So again, I just asked, what is the huge edge here if the grappling doesn't work out? Because number one, you got to close distance to grapple, right? So like Amanda Lemos, what does she want to do? Close distance. She's not going to make it hard for you. She wants to fucking get in the pocket and swing. And by the way, she's stronger than most women. She's willing to find out. But in that fight, she was outmatched physically. In this fight, I think Yan Xiaonan is wise enough to know, okay, I don't want to go physicality for physicality with this girl. I want to skirt around the outside, make her chase me like I did Jessica Andrade, try and touch, and go. And if she could do that, I think it's going to look like a much more honest fight. Now, if this fight gets to the ground, it could look dicey. But what she did is what normal champions would do, is they realize I have a huge hole in my game and I need to fix it right now, or I'm not going to get my goals. I'm not going to get where I want. She moved her life from China to Team Alpha Male. You could say whether or not you think that's a plus EV decision, right? Team Alpha Male, maybe not the place I'd go, but she obviously has enough people in the community and her parents are there supporting her and all these kind of things, the small little details that can make a big difference. She put together a real training camp for this. She's trained with real grapplers. She tried to do everything in her power at her age to get better at grappling from the time that she got exposed until today. Against Marina Rodriguez, did we see her get exposed again? Is that why she lost again? No, I thought she won the fight. And either way, it was a striking fight that was very close on the feet with a primary striker. So it's just like, this girl has shown if I'm out there doing my discipline, I'm one of the best. If I'm out there, doing somebody else's discipline, I'm not there yet. But could she shore up those gaps enough to be defensively responsible? That's the question. Because by the way, guys, Amanda Lemos, I bet, plus 600 sub, Jessica Andrade. And she easily submitted her in the first round with a move that wouldn't work on most white belts at Renzo Gracie Warwick. And I'm sorry if I'm being disrespectful, but that's the truth. And then you look at, this most recent fight, Zhang Weili has every position she could ever want, damages the shit out of her, beats her up in every great spot. She doesn't finish. That was frustrating for me. I had the ends by sub. I was frustrated at both of them. I was like, somebody just fucking do something stupid and get finished here. And it was a masterclass. It was a domination. And if she does it again, she's going to keep being minus 500 until she inevitably, like every champion does, loses the belt. And when you start getting to 34, 35 years of age, when you've been through the wars, you know what Yan Xiaonan has done? She had one fight where she got her ass whooped in the UFC, and it was quick, it was fast. She learned her lesson. She got out of there. This girl has been flatline knocked out with a head kick in the first round. This girl has been rocked by, mid-level girls in the division. I'm trying to think of their names off the top of my head and draw.
Well, Joanna basically knocked her out at the end of round 2. I don't know if you remember, she got carried to her stool at the end of round 2 against Joanna by her coaches.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the damage she incurred. The Danielle Taylor fight, she was out on her feet briefly and came back. She recovered. Her recoverability is sick. I think she's on some drugs that we've never even heard of before. But when you talk about the fact that she can be hittable, she can get clipped, and this girl, Yan Xiaonan, throws a lot of strikes and has some power. It's a women's MMA fight. It's a high-level fight. The pressure has never been higher. And I think that Yan Xiaonan has more chance to overperform expectations than Zhang Weili, because Zhang Weili's expectations are 85% of the time, she's going to win this fight. She's going to dominate her. She's going to make it look easy. She's going to submit her. That's what everybody thinks. I don't know. I'm not sold. I think it's a closer fight than the odds let on. And I think that Yan Xiaonan is going to pull through as a dog for the boys. We'll have to wait and see. Great fight.
I could be talked into it.
All right.
Last
looks interested.
Could be talked into it.
We
Just
have-
saying.
Hey, I'll keep talking then. Fuck. No, but I think that for this main event, guys, we have a fantastic fight. I want to do one thing.
Oh, was that a
Unfortunately, not a fresh one, but I just wanted
So,
to
all right, we're gonna do a fresh one, though. Liam's gonna do one. Clint's gonna do one. It's the main event.
John, you talked me into it. You drove.
I could be talked into it.
We're doing the tequila. It's Thursday night. It's work from home life. Let's.
Hey, UFC 300. Y'all are getting a special treat. We never do shit like this on the show, but it's well worth it. God bless you all. Hope you're having
Cheers.
fun. Cheers, boys.
Whew.
Oh,
Let's go. That'll put hair on
do
your
I have
chest.
anything to chase with? Nope. Am I gonna have to just sit here in misery?
Yep.
Excuse me. Yep.
That's the game, though.
And
We got
there's
a great fight to talk about, though.
Fuck yeah, we do. We got the main event of the evening. We got two great guests to break it down with us. We got the sharpest chat in the motherfucking game. I apologize for my voice cutting out. Guys, here we go. Alex Poatan Pereira taking on Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill. I'm going to have some sweet dreams, if nothing less, tonight. Clint, my brother, I know you got
Whoa, hold on.
Yes.
I was going to say, I feel like I'm very curious to hear Liam's take, because I'm pretty sure my two kids know what Clint's take is here. Everybody knows.
I haven't been beating my chest for the last 2 months or anything.
Clint put his balls on the table. I'm talking big time. I'm talking said, hey, if you want the smoke, come get the smoke. He put it out publicly. So I think that it's a great place to start. It's a great main event breakdown. Clint, what do you got for us? Who do you think takes down the main event of UFC 300?
You guys, this is easy. This is Jamahal Hill. This is Jamahal Hill season, okay? It's been Jamahal Hill season. It's gonna be Jamahal Hill season. They're gonna say, and new, when he wins the title and has gold wrapped around his waist again. But the truth is the man never left. It's and still, because he has always been the rightful champion of 205 pounds. I've talked about this more times than I can count, guys. Jamahal Hill is an absolute animal, right? His only loss on his entire record was his arm had to be snapped in half by Paul Craig. But he's the type of guy that didn't tap. He's the type of guy that didn't stop. The ref stopped it. If you had let that fight continue, he would have knocked you out with the bloody stump of that arm. Like, that's the kind of animal that this guy is. He has this unbelievable, sorry, the shots are getting to me, unbelievable sense of self-belief in himself. And that's that kind of attitude that you want with a fighter, especially in a situation like this. Now, I got to shout out again, my guy, Dan Levy. People are worried about the injury. People are worried about the layoff. He got cleared by Kobe Bryant's doctor, apparently. So we're talking like insane high-level sports medicine. He was talking through his interviews. He was ready to come back some time ago. And the team was like, whoa, slow down. So like, he feels ready to compete. An extremely high-level doctor has cleared him to compete. And now I'm a fantasy football guy, right? Like, I play fantasy football way more than I should and gamble way more money on that every single year than my wife knows about. But what I'm telling you guys is, when it comes to these like ACL tears and stuff like that, the Achilles, we see a lot of those injuries in football, right? The technology is getting better. The guys that used to go out with that injury, career ending, season, life ending, it's over. You'll never play football ever again. It's two seasons, they're back. They're not quite themselves in season 2, but they can come back after a season. That just happened 9 months ago. They're already walking around on the sideline helping coach. Like, it's getting better and better and better and better. These injuries are repairable now. They're fixable. And when you've got high caliber doctors, when you've got $1 million sports companies that rely on these people being stars, all of a sudden you start getting extra help where it needs to go. So Jamahal, I think, is cleared. If a doctor of that caliber says he's good, I say he's good. This is a spot where Jamahal is faster than Alex Pereira. Now, did Alex just beat Francis Ngannou's, punch power test at the UFC PI? Yeah, he did do that. So, am I worried about the left hand?
The punch power is a bunch of fucking
Dude,
malarkey.
didn't Jack beat it too? I feel like it's happened like 4 times in the last 2 months.
UFC, whether it's true or not, will be like, you know what? We had flyweights beat fucking Francis Ngannou. Tatsuro Tyrant with the new record.
I still just want to see the video of Joe Pyfer. I just want to see the video.
That's the one, Joe Pyfer. He said beat it.
They said he did it. Now,
that
they've
was
got
a
video of
DraftKings
Alex
sponsored
doing
fucking punching of that bag. I'm telling you, dude.
By the way,
that, they were behind it all.
I will tell you this. I saw Joe Pyfer in Atlantic City at a bar. That is a gigantic human being. I actually, when I kind of believe it, like way bigger than I thought.
His big muscles weren't enough to scare Jack Hermanson. Clint, please continue.
Exactly. Now, so obviously the left hand, right? The left hand. But one thing that Jamahal Hill can do, has done, and is able to do in this fight is switch stances. So I think that's going to be a thing that will confuse the offense here for world champion kickboxer Alex Pereira. And you might be like, guys, the big thing for me, he says he's going to knock out Alex Pereira. And you freaking idiot. You're not going to knock out Alex. Go wrestle. He's never shot a takedown. Not one. Jamahal Hill has never shot a single takedown in the history of his professional career. Why do you think he suddenly would try to be a D1 wrestler against this guy? He trusts and believes in his hands. And people want to discount a 5-round war against Glover Teixeira. I actually had some people be like, what's his best win? It's like, Glover fucking Teixeira, man. Like, yes, he was 40 years old, but he was the rightful lineal champion. He was a legend in the sport. He's a guy who's insanely durable with great cardio, a BJJ black belt. And you want to discount the fact that Jamahal Hill dog walked that man for 25 straight minutes? Like, no, this is a man who is unreal. His level is beyond what anybody else has in the UFC. And I know it's not the fact that he's a world champion kickboxer. He's not a better striker than Alex Pereira, technically speaking. He is younger. He is faster. He is more durable. He has better cardio. And those are the things that are going to carry him to victory here in this spot. It's 205, guys. I think that Pereira's chin has been dust for a long time, okay? Israel Adesanya knocked him flat, knocked him dead in that fight. Cash the KO prop, by the way. I called that shit. There's a combination that Alex Pereira throws in every single one of his fights. Every single one. You go back and rerun the tape. Every single time he's fought Israel Adesanya, he gets rocked by the same exact counter shot in every single fight. And Israel just never sat down on it enough. And finally, in that last fight, he said, this is my last shot. I got to beat this guy. I got to get my belt back. Fine, fuck it. Sits down on it, knocks him out. That's all. Like, he could have done it, and Israel Adesanya could have been 4-0 over Alex Pereira. But instead, he didn't sit down on the perfect counter and just kept on waiting and waiting and waiting. Now he finally does it. Guess what? Boom, KO. Easy peasy. It's done. It's over. Now, who did Jamahal Hill go to help for in this fight? He called Israel Adesanya. They talked about the fight. They talked about the matchup. Guys, changing of the guard. Changing of the fucking guard. You've got an old...
You think Jamahal counters like Israel Adesanya does, though?
I think he can. I mean, he does.
Do you?
With training? Do I think Jamal can learn how to counter a combo? Yes. Yes, I do, John. So, no, obviously he's not that caliber of a kickboxer. That's not his game. That's not his style. But again, the durability, the speed, the explosiveness, the cardio, these are the things that are going to get it done for Jamahal Hill. The stance switching will help with the leg kick issue. Could his calf get kicked off? Could his Achilles get ruptured with the first calf kick? Yes. Yes, it could. Yes, it could. Could he get caught with the left hand? Yes, it could. But if these guys go 1-for-1, I think I know who's going to be on their back, right? Like, I believe Jamahal Hill can take more punishment than Alex Pereira can at this point in his career. Alex Pereira has done, this is his second round at a combat sports career, right? Like, this guy's chin has been cracked multiple times. Jamal's chin has never been cracked. He's taken shots. He's bled. He's never been knocked out before. It took a guy breaking his arm and the referee pulling him off to stop that fight. It's Jamahal Hill season, boys. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So what? It's the biggest bet of my life, okay? I did this with Yuri. I said I feel if they ran that fight back that Yuri would win it. I thought he was winning in the first place. Yuri comes out this week and tells us that he only had 1 full week of training leading up to that fight. It's like, well, fuck me, right? Like, that would have been good to know. But
yeah,
it is what it is. He was still winning the
press
fight.
Conference, huh, Yuri? You fucking asshole.
Right? No, but he was still winning the fight right up until he got caught. I still would make the bet again if they ran it back anyway. It is what it is. I think this is a bad matchup, man. I'm betting Jamahal Hill. I'm putting my nuts on the table. And that's what gambling is about. I'm going to be wrong and go down with the ship, and it's going to hurt for 6 months if I'm wrong this time, okay? But it is what it is. I'm doing it.
I absolutely love it. And I love the confidence. I love the fact that you're backing your guys. I think that when you look at Jamahal Hill, I mean, he's a proven underdog, right? I think he was plus money when he went out there and fucking broke Jim Crute's face in like 30 seconds. So You look at this guy, he can do the damn thing. He's a scary guy. I said this week, love him or hate him, Jamahal Hill is a fucking bad man. Like, if you disagree with that after watching everything he's done in the UFC, I mean, God bless your heart, but like, I wouldn't want to fight this dude in a bar if I had a gun. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jamahal Hill, not the right kind of guy to mess with. However, it's a cage fight, right? And it's a crazy one. It's at 205 pounds. Anything could happen. John Stargarian, how do you see this one going, my brother?
Yeah, I mean, Jamahal Hill is a gangster. No doubt about it. Like, I am one of those fucking squares who bet minus 160 on Jimmy Crute. Fortunately, I bet Alonzo Metafield not once, where I had a draw out of it, but twice after I realized what Jimmy Crute was. I mean, so here's the thing: like in a vacuum, if you gave me all of Jamahal Hill's physical attributes coming into this fight that he normally has, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, I have to lean that side just based purely on physical intangibles. Because I do think Alex Pereira is chinny. I think he's got potential cardio issues. And Jamahal Hill is a badass who's like, here's the thing. Like, I am normally, or this year, as I've looked at more and more data from the UFC in history, become one of those people. It's like, okay, people used to shit on Tyron Woodley, right? Because like he was low volume. But the thing is, power suppresses volume, except against certain people. Jamahal Hill is one of those fighters who doesn't give a fuck. He's like, I trust my chin. I'm going to go forward. I don't care. You can hit me. I'm going to hit you back. And that would be enough. The thing is, for one, the injury he has is like, I know it's Kobe Bryant's doctor. I know all that. Like, I'm a Jets fan, okay? Aaron Rodgers suffered an Achilles tear in the 4 plays in the season last year. I have been researching Achilles ruptures and how the recovery goes for the last 12 months. All right. It doesn't go well.
I'm still hoping J.K. Dobbins signs with somebody.
It's like the only athlete who has come back to previous form pretty much ever from an Achilles rupture is Kevin Durant, who's like one of the two best athletes from the last 30 years. So I feel like it's something that's like not being talked about enough, that it's like, this isn't an ACL tear. Like an ACL tear 15 years ago was like, all right, we'll see how it goes. These days, professional athletes get ACL tears. They're back 6 to 12 months later, usually in pretty normal form. That still is not the case with Achilles tears. It's a big injury. So I think it adds a wrench of variance that is extremely high, no matter how you want to think about it. From a micro standpoint, in terms of the fight, look, I agree with some of Clint's points about Alex Pereira. Like, if you can get inside on this guy and hit him, I don't think he's got the best durability. I think he can be hurt. I think he can be finished. I think his cardio is a tad questionable. But what I will say about Alex Pereira is he's one of the most skilled kickboxers in the sport that we've ever seen, really. Like, you go look at his wins. Now, granted, the UFC has matched him fairly friendly, right? They haven't thrown him in there with any grapplers, but he knocked out Sean Strickland, who won the title. He had 7 very competitive rounds with Israel Adesanya. He knocked out Jerry Prochazka. He's, I think, pretty much shown us at this point that, like, whatever you think about his durability, cardio, whatever, the dude is a very, very skilled kickboxer. On the other side with Jamahal Hill, all of his physical intangibles, I think, are off the charts. From a technical standpoint, I think there's a lot to be desired. Like, as an offensive boxer, he's a very good offensive boxer. Great 1-2s, very quick for the division, long. But he gets hit a lot. Like, you look at the Thiago Santos fight. Like, every time they engaged in heavy exchanges, he was getting hit. What he displayed was a great chin, but it's like, your chin can only last so long when you're going up against elite power. And then it's like you throw in the other injury. You throw in the fact that, like, I mean, I know Jamahal Hill is fast, but, like, I think a reasonable take is he's not as fast as Israel Adesanya, or as sharp a counter striker as Israel Adesanya is, or just a general kickboxer. And it's like, he's probably taking a decent step up here against a guy who's the same size as him, who can be hit, but who does a very, very strong job of picking the right engagements. Like, that's to say, I don't actually think Alex is as good a counter striker as he gets credit for. What I think he is a very high IQ fighter. He does a tremendous job of timing when he wants to engage with guys, both with his leg kicks, with his counters, with everything. He's not super fast. He's not a very sharp counter striker, but his IQ when it comes to striking is, like, off the charts. Which, I mean, if you look at the record of his career, both in kickboxing and the UFC, between the two, he's only been knocked out twice. Like, he's shown that is what he is. And so I think about the fight, and it's like, I rate the wins Alex has better than I rate Hill's. I rate Hill's physical intangibles pre-injury better than Alex's. But when I think about how this will go down, it's like, if it was a pick'em price right now, like minus 110 aside, I'm betting Alex. Like, just because I don't know. Because, like, an Achilles, it's not just, like, his hand speed will be fine. I have no doubt about that. But, like, the difference between stepping forward quick into the pocket and ducking a strike and landing your own strike, and stepping forward a quarter of a second step slower with a giant man who counters somewhat well, it's a pretty huge difference, you know? Like, if his leg is compromised, it can make all the difference in the world in terms of how Pereira times engagements because he's good at it. And on top of that, it's like the leg kicks of Pereira. If his leg is compromised, how long does he hold up under that? He basically wrecked Izzy's legs 2 fights in a row. So it's funny because when the first, like, a year ago, prior to the Hill injury, I was like, when Pereira beat Jan and I bet Jan, I was like, I would love to bet Hill at pick'em against Pereira. Today, I'm like, I still have all the feelings I had about that in terms of the physicals, the speed, the age, all of that stuff, except there is this massive, massive injury that most pro athletes never show up the same from. Even when we talk about stuff with Kobe Bryant's doctor, right? It's like, if you study, Kobe's like my favorite player ever, and the dude was never the same post Achilles surgery.
The difference between you and me, John, is I'm not a coward. Jamahal sees it. Let's go.
I honestly lean the Pereira side, and then from a more even more micro technical level, like Jamahal gets countered over the top a lot of his jab. Not that it's lazy, but he throws it low, and he does get countered over it. And now he's facing a guy with like the left hook of death, who has done such a good job countering throughout his career. It's not a passionate take. I'm not betting Alex Pereira minus 130. If it gets to minus 110, I might play it tiny. But I feel like he's taking, in addition to taking a step up in competition, he's 9 months. Like Kevin Durant was 16 months with that injury to come back to health. He's telling us he's healthy, but I also know for a 100% fact that he got a bag to take this fight. Like, I know it. I'm not going to say how I know it, but I do know it.
Everybody knows it. You don't need a source.
Yeah,
Everyone
we don't know what he's going to show up like. And so it's a high volatility fight, in my opinion. I lean the Alex side slightly, but to Clint's point, it's like if Jamahal can force the pocket and his Achilles isn't hampering him, if they're going to exchange shot for shot, I lean the Jamahal side. I just question how likely that is to happen. So, like, I lean to Alex, like, minus 130. That's about what I think the line should be, frankly. I'd play it at minus 110, but otherwise, I mean, this is a fucking banger main event. It's like, honestly, it's not Conor McGregor, but Conor McGregor is 36 years old in the cokehead. Like, who cares at this point? Like, this is, if you're a diehard MMA fan, this is like what you want in like a major card main event. I'm excited to watch it. Again, if it comes in enough, I'll bet Pereira, but otherwise, I'm happy to watch it. What do you think, Liam?
Hey, you give me 2 or 3 more shots, I'll take Conor McGregor over both these guys plus 150. I'm fucking around, boys. Yo, here's what I'm going to do. I do not have strong thoughts on this main event. So what I will do is this. I'll very quickly steel man the case for both guys. Here's the case for Jamahal Hill as I see it. He's the younger guy, right? He's coming into this spot. He's a Dana White Contender Series product. And one thing that Dana has always tried to do is position these guys in spots where they can win titles, be meaningful, prove his concept. Hey, I'm so good at picking talent. Look at me. Look at my talent picking abilities. That's what Dana wants to do. How do we know that? Look at Sean O'Malley. He gets brought up. Snoop,
he tried to do it with Alex Perez. They forced him into a title fight, like 6 fights into his career.
Exactly. And all these guys from Contender Series, I do think that Dana wants to see them win titles, convert, come through. And Jamahal Hill got that opportunity. By the way, fucking no sooner than they had walked out of the octagon with the draw. He's like, Jamahal, we need you in there. You're in there, kid. All right, ready for this opportunity? Bing, hangs up the phone. So I think that when you look at Jamahal Hill, he is young, confident as fuck, hits like a truck, probably better at jiu-jitsu overall, very close, I would reckon, in that regard. But like, if somebody was to wrestle and grapple, who would it surprise you more? Like, I think that Jamahal probably has more wrestling upside. I think that the grappling upside is probably evened out. Right? Because if you look, Alex has been attacking some submissions in these fights. He's looked for the guillotine. He's looked for these things. He does work with Glover Teixeira. He does work with Wellington Sermon and these guys that know jiu-jitsu. So he's been working on that. He's obviously like preparing every fight. Somebody's going to try and take him down. They're going to try and mix it up with him a little bit. And for Jamahal, he's got the confidence to say, I don't need to do that. I don't need to go out there and take this guy down. I'll beat him up on the feet. I will knock this guy the fuck out. That's a rare confidence. Most guys, I'll tell you, are going in there to fight Alex Pereira like, fuck. I wish I had somebody else. This is going to suck if I win. It's going to suck even worse if I lose. Like, fighting Pereira is a tough assignment because, yeah, you could beat him, but you could get embarrassed. You could get schooled. You could get finished. You can get hurt. I thought Yuri was fighting a great fight. He took him down. He got to good positions. He landed a ton of damaging strikes. He even hurt Alex. Like, he had Alex rocked, wobbled, backing up. He wasn't able to finish the show. Jan Blachowicz put him in really dangerous situations. And I thought that he had him finished, like as good as dead, right? On his back, first round. I was like, man, this guy's dead to rights. Got nothing for him. Wasn't able to close the show. So you look at some of those fights and you say to yourself, man, you know what? Alex, he's getting better. He's a good fighter. He's got all these skills. Here's the steelman case for Alex Pereira. He's a fucking glory world champion. And the other guy says, I want to knock you out. It's like, Okay, good luck. Like most of the time when you want to go kickbox with a kickboxer, doesn't turn out your way. However, we've got counter examples. Khalil Roundtree, Gokhan Saki. Any of y'all old enough? Like, yo, Gokhan Saki got sent to the realm of wind and ghost by a guy who at the time was barely 500 in the UFC. Now Khalil's on a different trajectory. He's been doing his thing. He's been steroiding out, whatever you want to say. Hey, a lot of positives. But I'm looking at this and I say to myself, Pereira has a nasty left low kick. He's got nasty low kicks in general. Do you want to get a surgically repaired leg kicked by a guy like that? Probably not. So that for me is like, all right, Steelman Pereira. He's got this left hook. Jamahal Hill sometimes be doing this. Like, he's a fucking nasty striker, but he's got so much confidence and bullishness and balls that he's just like, fuck it. Like, I'm swinging. Like,
I'll slow down.
That Thiago Santos finishing sequence, one of my favorite in fighting, because I had 5.5 units on Jamahal. He literally stalked him like he was trying to kill a man in a street altercation. And when he hit the ground, he's just like, bing, bing, elbowing him like he was a fucking heavy bag. So I'm like, yo, this guy Jamahal Hill, no regard for health and safety.
He's built different.
Or his opponent. He is built different. He is also a guy that I feel like in this spot, if you had given me plus money, same circumstances, and there was no injury, I would have to take it and live with the result. Just like I did with Yuri Prochazka. He got slept, he got knocked out. I'd have to take it and live with the result. I am concerned about that injury, right? Like, because when you just look, I think the UFC has tried to do everything in their power. This is a personal opinion, to set up Alex Pereira for success. You can ask why. I don't know fully, but he's a social media star, and they've put him in position after position to succeed. They give him Sean Strickland. I bet him there. He's plus 115. Everybody wants to tell me how Sean Strickland's going to wrestle him, going to grapple him. I was like, maybe, could he? Sure. Have you ever seen him do it? He didn't do it. He does not want to. He's not trying to wrestle. He's not trying to grapple. And the same thing is true of Jamahal Hill. And the problem that I'm having here is like, in that last fight, it was plus 115 Pereira. All right, easy click for me. Like, yeah, take the guy who I know is going to be the better kickboxer in a matchup between two guys who want to kickbox. Fuck it. Let's find out. Because Sean Strickland's also not that big a hitter. But the difference is now you have to pay chalk to find out, and you've got the bigger hitter, arguably, in Jamahal Hill. Both these guys hit like trucks, but Pereira kind of has to calf kick you first, right? Like if you look historically, he had to calf kick Yuri before he could knock him out. He had to prod Sean to the body before he knocked him out upstairs. It's more tactics than it is just raw power. But
it's
then you
all
look at the
tactics.
Thomas Powell fight. You look at the Thomas Powell fight, and bro, I swear to God, I said this many times, but I truly believe this. It looks like he's going like this. It looks the most nonchalant left hook, and Thomas Powell is asleep face down on the mat for 6 minutes. Like, Alex Pereira does have that power, and he's that tactical, but he could also get overwhelmed here. Because I do think Jamahal Hill has a never say die, fuck it attitude where he can just walk into the pocket and fucking kill this guy. So my strong thoughts on this fight are somebody's going to get finished in the first 3 rounds. That's how I truly feel about this. When I look at the fight on paper, I say to myself, big knockout power in both directions. 2 guys that are willing to be reckless with their offense, and 2 guys that really believe in themselves. You think Alex Pereira is afraid to fucking kickbox with Jamahal Hill? Let's be serious. Fuck no, he's not. But he was not afraid to go with Israel either. How'd that turn out for him? He got fucking sent to the depths of hell. So it's like, that fight tells me a lot of what I need to know about this one, which is either guy could win it. The truth is, I thought he was whooping Israel's ass in that rematch. I bet Israel both times. I thought the first time.
I bet him huge the second time. And I felt horrible. I felt horrible about it before he finished him.
I felt great.
And that's the way I feel, man. And I want your thoughts on this to close us out here, Clint. But basically, when I look at this, I say to myself, like, Alex Pereira can win the fight, has all the tools to win the fight, but he's got to overcome a guy who's young, hungry. On the other side, Alex Pereira's got everything. He's been there. He's got fucking Polyana Vienna at home doing whatever she's doing for him. It's like, my man is just on a different trajectory. He's 36. He's a 2-weight world champion. He's fucking beaten a laundry list of UFC guys. He's proven it all. So if he keeps doing it, all you can do is take the hat off to the legend. But at minus 130, 36-year-old champion, I'm telling you guys, most of the time, I'm fading champions when they're 35 and older, period, point blank. I'm not getting a good enough price to feel like I have to right now. But whether it's Leon against Usman, whether it's fucking Strickland against Adesanya, whichever.
We don't talk about Leon Usman.
I know. I'm so sorry. But I'm telling you, man, whether it's Valentina and fucking Talia Santos and then Alexa Grasso, I'm there for all of them. I keep running them because eventually I'll catch you. And if you're giving me 4 and 5 to 1, I'll definitely live to fucking find out the result. But in this case, 1.1 to 1, it's like, all right. Like, I guess it's like you're getting moderate underdog value. And listen, Clint, I fucking respect the shit out of, hey, at even money, I'm so confident in this, take the other side. I've had times in my life where I felt that confident. Like Thiago Santos against Jamahal Hill, I would have went, 5.75 units straight up with anybody who wants to do it at minus 300. I would have lived with the result. In this spot, though, I just feel like it's a 50-50 fight. I can understand why that rationalizes, hey, plus 110 on Jamahal Hill, but I think you're throwing out the ticket, roughly 40 to 50% of the time, best case scenario. That's kind of the way I feel, but fuck it, man. I respect the balls. I respect the take. And I also think you got the younger guy who's durable and probably has more paths to victory at a plus money price. It's like, how wrong could you be? But I also think Alex Pereira on the other side, man, I hate putting money in front of that guy. He took my money bad against Izzy that first time. So maybe that's left a bad impression for me. Clint, what are your closing thoughts on this, my man? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the killer show, both you guys. But brother, you had big thoughts on this. You had a big bet. Let us know your thoughts after all this bullshit you've heard me.
Hell yeah. No, you guys aren't wrong. You guys aren't wrong. Like, those things are all accurate. Those things are all correct. Alex is a scary person to be on the opposite side of. I think I have an angle. I think I had an angle where I could have won my bet last time. Bro only trained for 1 week and he got caught by the left hand. We knew that could happen. I'm doing it again. I'm getting plus money again. I don't care how much plus money. Plus money is plus money. I'm taking it. I'm flipping the coin. I'm going for it. And on top of that, I called my shot. I circled this spot. Is it ideal? No. Jamahal coming off of a layoff and an injury instead of having it be a normal training camp. No, that's not ideal. But I said I'm going to do it, and I'm doing it. And people that are like, oh, but bro, you're telling people to bet all their... No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I said this is the biggest bet of my life. I'm a degenerate with a podcast. I'm not telling you to bet anything. I'm not telling anybody jack shit, okay? I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And in fact, I'm doing the world a service because what I did was I said, I'm so confident, I'll take even money on this spot and I'll give you a chance to come get even money on the side that you like. You're welcome. Instead of giving me shit for doing it, why don't you say thank you for giving you the best odds in the game? And Campbellstein, you son of a bitch, talking about how I'm doing all these max bet mush spots so that I can say, one, I told you so. 7-2, baby. 7-2 on my max bets. I might be a degenerate. I might be a goofball. I might have no hair. But when I sit back up and my balls on the table, 7-2. 7-2 on your chin, not on the table, son. I love this spot. It's Jamahal freaking Hill. And new, and still, whatever you want to call it. That's it. I'm going home with the bag on Saturday, and I can't wait.
We got to do one more shot, Liam. We got to do one more shot for the people.
One more shot.
We're going to close up. We got Liam drinking here. We got to.
You know what it is? We've got 300, so we got to do at least 3 shots before we get out of here.
There it is.
That seems only right. We'll do one for each numbered event that hit 100 for the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships. I want to say this to you guys. God bless you all. I appreciate you all for being here, most especially to my fucking guests who have taken a lot of time out of their day, almost 3.5
Liam, you're the man.
Absolute blast. Always a pleasure. Thank you to you guys. Cheers to you both. God bless.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
God bless.
Cheers.
Your boy has to write a fucking article after this.
That was an awesome show.
Disaster. Worst Roto Grinders article of all time. If you guys Liam, what the fuck? This isn't even in English. Why'd you write half of it in Chinese? Yo, just fucking deal with me, guys. I'm trying my best. But I'll say this. I've had an absolute fucking blast. I'm fired up for this card. I'm really appreciative of the community. A lot of people have been showing up, getting fired up in the chat. Sharpest chat in the game. I'll say this to you guys. We're not here for UFC next week because there is no UFC. But anytime there is a UFC, my ass is in the jackpot. It's here on YouTube each and every week. It's on Roto Grinders. It's on Better.
Little Terry Collins reference?
Dude, we're doing it all. Whatever it takes. We're here. We're fucking queer. We're ready to fucking show up. I don't give a fuck. My dog's in the background. He's saying, please take me for a goddamn walk. And here's what I'm saying. I'm saying we had a great show. We had great guests. We had great people. Thank you all. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. I'll be back tomorrow to talk with you guys after the weigh-in show. So we'll see the weigh-ins. We'll get a feel. Did Kayla Harrison make it? Did she not? Any weight misses, any shenanigans, we will have you covered. But I want to give my guests a quick opportunity. Please let the people know where they can find you. Home of Fight, the new home of the Die Hard MMA podcast. Biggest show in the space. You don't need an introduction, but you got an introduction. Clint, tell the people where they can find you, please.
Liam, I appreciate the hell out of you, man. Both these guys, regular guests on the show. We are at the home of Fight, absolutely. And the question in the chat was, where do you go to get plus money on Alex Pereira? Unfortunately, it's been booked already, guys. I tweeted it. If you follow me on Twitter, I posted it.
It gave you a fair chance.
Yeah, I did. I told you it was coming. I said, get ready. I said, sign up. I posted the bet. It got snatched up. So it's gone now, but you could have had it. Anyway, I've got oh shit, I have to do the total takedown. Damn it. I have to do a show after this, guys. But tomorrow I've got the undefeated post weigh-in show after everything is all said and done. And of course, everybody's favorite, the Sharp Action Report. We're going to have the head odds manager from Superbook Sports, our guy Andrew Babkis, comes over and talks to us about sharp and public action. So that show is going to be tomorrow. But everything is at Home of Fight, guys. Die Hard MMA podcast. Search it on everything. You'll find me, I'm sure. Just want to say thank you, guys. This was an absolute blast. This was fun. I have to go get my daughter a shower at some point and probably feed her. But this was great. Thank you, guys. It was a blast doing the roundtable.
You're an absolute man for it. Thank you for showing up. Thank you. We're trying to mend fences as well on the show, guys. Rich, Clint, on different sides of the fence. Hey, we're mending some fences today. I hope my guy Rich got a nice fucking rest as well, because we kept him up too late over here. We had to switch some things around to get it all together, but UFC 300, all worth it. All a great show. John Stargarian, the fucking man, MMA Fox from the Club and Sub podcast. Guys, I think they just crept over 1,000 subscribers. That should have happened 10 months ago. Make sure that you subscribe. It's one of my favorite shows to listen to. I'm telling you right now, I listen every week. Fucking get subscribed right now. The link is in the description. Don't fucking play games with me. John, tell the people where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox. You want to chat fights? Tell me how wrong I am about fights? You can DM me there. Follow me there. I'm always down to talk. It's my favorite thing to do. Host the Club and Sub podcast with my boy Danny Lags every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes 6 when he's running when he's got shit going on with his girlfriend after. But otherwise, 7 p.m. Eastern, most Wednesday nights. Again, Club and Sub podcast, not that hard to find on Twitter, on YouTube. Please follow us, like, subscribe if you like what we're doing out there. Liam, I want to thank you for hosting this. You are literally like one of the best people in the space, one of the only people who is not a complete, you know what, when it comes to talking fights, you're one of the only people I can talk to after I lost a bet and you won, but I don't want to be like, I want to put a bullet in your brain right now. But anyway, thanks for having us on. I had an awesome time here.
I'm glad, man. I'll tell you guys this. We're all about fun, love, and positivity on this show, right? Like, I'm not going to come here and be like, I'm fucking so smart. I have it all figured out. Fucking take all my bets and just follow them blindly. None of that, right? But what I will do is I'll tell you guys how I honestly feel. I'll share my thoughts on the fights. I've been doing this shit a long time. I've been a nerd before it was cool. Fucking 12 years old, watching these fights by myself every Saturday night. It's gotten me to this point, okay? But I'll just tell you guys, that's the reason I do this, is because I fucking love it. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. I enjoy trying to solve the puzzle. I forget who said it. God, he's a really smart, Brett Appley, I think it was. Brett Appley, very sharp guy in the DFS space. And what he had said was, it's a puzzle every week. That's what I'm here for, baby. I like a fucking puzzle. I like fighting. I like the fucking nuances. It's a crazy sport. If you think you have it all figured out, you'll get fucking humbled and embarrassed. Once again, that's the way this thing works. So for me, it's the beauty of the sport, man. I'm excited for UFC 300, where we get a lot of great fights, a lot of great conflict, and a lot of great conflict resolution. That's the signature of the sport, baby. So any other closing comments, guys, before I wrap us up?
You're doing great work, Liam. We appreciate it. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you, my brother. I will say, guys, last but not least, find the Die Hard MMA show. Go to Home of Fight. All of that's linked down in the description box below. Absolutely no excuse. Also, get subscribed to Club and Sub. Do it today. Get subscribed on Twitter to my guy at Die Hard MMA Pod, at MMA Fox, and myself at LiamPicksFights. If you're looking for more fight talk, I post videos. I post content. I post betting shit. I'm trying to help people, and that's what I try and do. I put out a lot of premium content as well. Research, I try and put out world-class resources, things that take me a lot of time, effort, and energy. And if it can't help your process, I'm sorry, but most people, I think it can help your process. If you're out here trying to bet week to week on this stuff and make money, I think it can help you. If you think so too, go ahead in that description box below. Find what we're working on, patreon.com/LiamPicksFights. All I'm doing is putting up all my information. You do with that what you will. I tell you what I'm betting on. I tell you why I'm betting on it. I tell you all the thoughts that I have on the card. If you like it, rock with me. If you hate it, fade me. And if you don't care, hey, indifference is all good with me. So God bless you all. Peace, love, and chicken grease. Until the next time, come back because we're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody. Enjoy UFC 300.
I'm cashing and